I need to go live. Oh, I'm live. Yasu as well. You need to start looking for a new computer, Harry. Well, actually, it wasn't that. I actually go to the... I went out shopping with Hello Kitty all the way, and I got back late, and by the time I get my food done, my coffee done, I was trying to get my coffee done, so it's been a mad rush. So basically, yeah, I blame her. Got to blame someone, you know. She'll probably end up on here abusing me. So, yes. Wasn't the computer this time, but yes, it does need replacing because it's damn slow in doing things and needs to be upgraded because it's, yeah, getting old in the tooth, so to speak, like yours truly. But yours truly doesn't need to be replaced. G'day, mate. How's it going? Meeting Charlie. Nice one, mate. Nice one. You got a nice name there. So I did actually have some cured meats. Looks fantastic. We actually got, I went actually and got some cheeses as well. I'll actually grab the cheese later anyway. But yeah, so I've been going through the aisle, smelling cheeses. We went to the IGA store up here as well when we were coming back, and we smelt the different cheeses, all the raw cheese and all the Italian cheeses. Some of them were a bit on the pungent side, which I do like, but, you know, our dear friend Hello Kitty, or Ling as I call, she goes, "Oh God, how do you eat that, Harry?" And I go, "Oh, just do it like this." So yes, we had a bit of a comical moment, a couple of them. Let's put it that way. So all lighthearted. She's good company. Yeah, Bjorn, g'day, mate. Good to see you. And there's your Richard. Mr. Mousy himself. Oops, he just dropped out as I was trying to click away. Jonathan, good to see you, mate. Made it. 1 hour, 17 into the early discussion. My informative media I listen to in my gym session. Please do another video with Bart. Look, we'll eventually do something together. Bart's been doing a whole lot of things. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with Bart. There's a whole lot of, if you take a look at the playlists, there's a whole lot of playlists there with a lot of different themes that we covered. So I probably do want to get back with him and do some, because there was some of the archaeological stuff and there was some of the sort of ancestral stuff that we've talked about. But I was supposed to come back and actually go through and do a longitudinal sort of, I did one, I actually ended up, because Bart was so busy, I ended up doing one with Pim and with his partner. And so that was basically on covering the APOE and covering the sort of ancestral roots of that. So that was basically something that I was supposed to do with Bart, not with Pim. But because Bart was really busy at the time, he was doing a lot of the Sarul stuff, and he had a whole lot of other people that he hadn't interviewed and he really wanted to interview at the time. And in recent times, he's just sort of got back, like a bit me, you know. I was inviting people left, right, and centre as well for a while there and all that. But it's actually easy. Just we sometimes get a bit lazy and sort of we get a bit it's just continuously contacting people and all that. And you get into the state where you go, okay, I'm just going to step back. I'm just going to do my thing for a while, chill out, do my thing and all that. I mean, he's got Jess over there at the moment for the, you know, doing some of her stuff and all that. So she's like she fills in and adds another component. And he's trying a few different things now to see whether he can sort of jazz it up and sort of work around the AI. It's hard for a lot of YouTubers, especially on our side of the fence, the sort of more carnivore or people that are on the other side of the fence on the climate stuff or on the nutrition stuff or on the COVID stuff or on all these sort of things. Well, we're just skeptical. I mean, to be a proper scientist, you should be skeptical about everything. It doesn't mean you should be just reject everything. No, it just means that, especially when we should say when we don't have enough information about things, we don't have. And people sometimes argue things, say things about, and I will basically say, well, scientifically, like the prions and a few other things that were covered, and I covered those quite clearly and comprehensively because they were pseudo nonsense, and it doesn't really help properly to inform people. But there were other things there that really, there's a good oncology research and stuff like that. And so we're putting out credible arguments and credible information, but we find that it's very risky, and the whole system really works against us. So it's a hard slog at the moment to touch any of these controversial subjects. I'm not going to stop in that regard, but I'm just going to be a bit more cautious. And if I have to take things off this and sort of like do announcements and say, guys, I've done something here, I'll redirect it to this other, like a number of people are doing, getting on other platforms and putting some material there. I just want to, when I do have a bit of time on the 18th, when I'm going to be on holidays for a week, I've planned to sort of, because I'm going to be at home and I'm just going to do exercises and stuff like that. In between, I'm going to do some material, just sort of material for you guys and all that, and finish off the myths and falsehoods of veganism and stuff like that. That probably doesn't help me with the AI either, that sort of material. But it's less problematic compared to what they're targeting at the moment. I don't know about the future. Whether I'll have to shift some of that material away from YouTube to another platform. Who knows? It's a crazy world we're living in at the moment, and it's not easy. That's quite stressful for him because social media and all this sort of stuff is his full-time thing. I mean, I've got a day job in the spatial science, in mapping and stuff like that, and so it's, for me, if this all was to be pulled apart, yeah, fine. It's not as if it's going to in any way affect my income or affect my life in any way. It's just, I can shift to another platform and start up again there. So it's not going to be the end of the world but for other people that have invested a lot of time, resources into their YouTube channel, it can be quite devastating for those people, and it's unfair. In my personal opinion, I view YouTube as they don't create content, we do. I view them like a mall, like you have a mall that has a lot of businesses and stores and stuff like that. Whether it's a food mall, whether it's a retail mall, irrelevant. A mall basically does not have the right to tell you how to run your business. They rent you out of space. In this case, YouTube does a different thing. Rather than renting you out of space, they advertise over your material. So it's like advertising in your business. And I've got no problems with that. That's fine. As long as they leave my business alone and all that, and, what I say and what I do in my business, or what services I provide, because even through this online, people provide both goods and services of different varieties. And they need to be left alone to be able to do that. It goes beyond just, it's not only a freedom of speech issue, it's also a freedom to undertake fair business activities without having the owner of the building, so to speak, or the channel, the sort of the infrastructure, basically dictating terms and conditions on what I can sell and what I can, it's not as that is just not on. It's like I've got a food industry. I sell organics, and somebody doesn't like organics. They can't walk into my business and tell me I can't sell organic fruit. As an example, I'm talking about. This is what I mean. That's interference. You're renting out the space, or in our case, we're signed up to a commercial agreement where they can actually advertise, which is fine, but keep out of my business. And, they've become far too intrusive, unfortunately, for a lot of us. So we'll see how it all plays out. It's not looking very good at the moment. Fluffy Rainbows, good to see you. You got a fan with Richard. Yes, Mouse is always up and down, but had a pretty good day. Oh, that's the main thing, Richard. Got all my washing and sheets done. I did that yesterday, actually, which was good. I got it out of the way. I had to, because last week it was like hellish sort of situation trying to work around my YouTube thing, doing all the laundry. Did it yesterday. Don't have to worry about it today. That's why I was able to go casually shopping and doing other things and not having to really run around like a mad goose, which I usually do on Sundays. Yes. Question everything. Yes. But we also need to apply the scientific method. When we do question things, we just shouldn't basically just jump on any idea. It's best not to hold any opinion about something if you don't have the facts, I usually say. So if you've got enough evidence and you've actually done good research and it actually stands up, I always look for the opposite. So if I can't find a credible opposite, then I go, maybe this has some credibility. So I always approach things like that. And that's a proper scientific approach. You need to basically disprove yourself, and you can't disprove yourself, then maybe, you're onto something. But if you can disprove even one thing, it's like, the Bradford-Hill criteria on epidemiology. I just have to prove one thing wrong. Doesn't matter how the statistical strength of something is, just if it fails on one, like with the aluminium thing, failed on one, it's irrelevant. That means that it's not a true 100% bona fide cause association. It's basically a fake association, like the shark attacks with ice cream. It's a fake. If one fails, it all fails, as Bart would say when it comes to the Bradford-Hill criteria. That's a clear thing in epidemiology. So even though that person sort of argued against continuously, I said, he sent me the study. And I go, well, it's these academics are making claims and they're working for these other people. And at the same time, it's actually failed in one of these people have got an interest, a vested interest. And they themselves had to admit that one of those things failed. I mean, it doesn't, even if it's a strong statistical, that is irrelevant. The odds ratios were low, and we know we have to have very high odds ratios when it comes to observational studies. It's not like clinical or randomized or stuff like that. We're talking about our observational stuff, so take it with a grain of salt. And that's why we always, in that way, we need to question things. Have to look, what is the strength of this, the real strength? What are the odds ratios? Not the risk ratios as they call them, but odds ratios. They're too low, they're irrelevant. I just ignore it completely. It's just irrelevant. But for me, actually, most of the stuff when it comes to nutrition, I look at archaeology. N15 data convinced me a long time ago. The rest is just basically cock-womble associations. It's the reality. But when other things, politics and other things out there, we should question those sort of things. And they are much harder to discern, to work out exactly the truths, because it's not something you can test very easily, unfortunately. And those are much more, way more difficult. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. You should always try to unravel things and work out, as they say, the old saying, follow the money. And Charlie's actually asking, I've heard you talk a lot about hydrate and with fat to lower deuterium. How does this work? Just eat more high-fat foods. If so, what do you recommend? Milk, fatty cuts, get fatty off cuts, etc. Okay. Now, it doesn't. You don't need to hydrate with external fats. You can hydrate with your own fat. So it's not a question of basically consuming fat. It's a question of reducing the deuterium load. That means the stuff coming in that have got deuterium. you can basically still hydrate with your own fat. If your insulin is low, when you're not eating, you're hydrating with your own fat. You will take every gram of fat that you take from your adipose tissue, you will produce 1.1 mils, or if you want to put it in grams, 1.1 grams of metabolic water, low deuterium metabolic water. That means it's water that will basically that will be produced in the Krebs cycle, and basically that water will create that metabolic water inside the matrix of the mitochondria, which then can provide the hydrogen ions, those protons that go into the mitochondrial membrane to basically then create a gradient and then be pushed through the ATP synthase to create energy. So, and the electrons will be stripped off to be used through the electron chain from that source, in a sense. But if that source is coming from very high carbohydrate or sources that are very high in deuterium, you can contaminate that water source. And that water source, if it's contaminated, because basically energy production ATP is really electrons and protons. If you put neutrons in there, which what is deuterium, the isotope, that other stable isotope of hydrogen, if you get these are bigger. Now, if they get into the gradients, get pushed through the pumps into that inner mitochondrial membrane, and they go through the gradients, then through these ATP synthase, they can be slowed down because these are bigger. They hit and slow down, so they can actually slow down your energy production. Slowing down your energy production means you heal less, you have less energy, you have less ability to repair, all these sort of things, do processes in your body that are actually, turning over, cellular, clearing out things and whatever else. All the things that, because we actually produce as much ATP as energy in weight as our entire weight. So if we're 70 kilos or 80 kilos or 100 kilos, we will produce the same amount in 24 hours in terms of energy. Massive amounts. If you impede this in any way, you're reducing the energy that is required for all these tissues, for a whole lot of metabolic process, for a whole lot of repair. And the older you get, the less capacity you've got to repair, the more rapidly you'll age, and your cells will move into senescence and potentially even cancerous if they become deranged for a number of different reasons, which we won't go in there because that's not the purpose of my answer. Now, deuterium is in a number of sources. Like water is very high in deuterium. Like if you get spring water from high elevations, the deuterium content of that is much closer to that of protein. Now, we don't oxidize protein, but it's much closer. So it's usually anywhere between 5 to 10 and sometimes up to 15 points lower. Now, the cutoff area is 130 parts per million and below. So the enzymes in the Krebs cycle and all that, they can handle some level of deuterium, and they can replace it with, regular hydrogen ions and remove those through this deuterionation process. So that's fine when that happens. But if you overload that system, eventually some of that will get through into that water matrix. Then you'll actually damage some of those or slow them down. Or if you put too much, you'll damage them. And if you bust them, you've busted them. And if you bust more and more, remember, melatonin is required to repair some of this. But if you've got too much damage, all those folds in that mitochondria, there are a whole lot of electron chains on all that. And what you're doing is you're actually reducing that electron chain, or that density of the capacity to produce energy. And so over time, you've got less capacity to repair the mitochondria, less capacity to repair these cells, and the cells start becoming more damaged over time. And as they become more damaged over time, they shift into senescence, and then the tissues that they are part of, whether it's a heart, a muscle, a part of the brain or whatever, starts deteriorating. And if it's a critical part, could actually precipitate quicker death than others. Usually the body's a bit robust. It actually works out where it needs to put a bit more resources and all that. But at the end of the day, and this is the reason why sometimes we have different derangements or cancers or all sorts of conditions in different tissue types. I may have in some, you may have in others or whatever, because where those damages are going to happen in terms of deuterium can vary quite a bit. So basically, this is doing an indirect damage. So how does it do the damage? It basically is reducing the energy to fix the problems. The damage is actually happening from other things, like you may get, for instance, the cardiolipin that's in the actual mitochondria right after complex 4. That could be affected in a sense by PUFA, which is oxidized and damaged. And then you have this leakage. You can't build up a good enough gradients to basically rotate that 9,000 RPM rotation to produce that energy where you want that high level of energy. So your energy will come down. You'll be producing maybe 70% of the energy you require to do all the different processes. Then the body will, 70% less work, 70% less repair, 70% a lot of things. And so you degrade much more rapidly over time. So you do not want this sort of stuff in your system. Traditionally, before refrigeration, we only had seasonal sugars. So we only had seasonal sugar, which was high. We had no processed refined sugars, but we had seasonal fruit, which is high in fructose and high in deuterium. We had seasonal tubers, which are slightly lower, but still about the same level. Most tubers and stuff like that are very similar to protein. But the difference is we don't oxidize protein, but we do oxidize those in the mitochondria, the glucose part. So a lot of these foods, when you add too much and the body can't actually strip it and get rid of it, it will build up. Water, no tribal society drinks water like we do. I mean, Mary Ruddock went through tribal people out in the desert and all this sort of stuff, and these people weren't drinking water. She couldn't understand. They were guzzling down water and taking water with us. And these tribal people just look at them, this is weird. Why are these people drinking constantly water? Or what are they drinking? And they're putting a whole lot of deuterium in their system. Now, obviously, you can deplete deuterium by 19 parts per million per hour from UV if you expose your whole body. None of us do. Yes, unless you want to be taken in by the police for indecent exposure. You're not going to do it. But the reality is that our bodies cannot handle too much deuterium of these isotopes. And with fat, you don't need to eat the fat. You can use your own fat from your own body and you can hydrate yourself. So I keep my hydration down to, my coffee water, and I actually use deuterium depleted water, which is water that's lower. That's about around about 10 parts per million lower. Now, it's still higher than the 130 threshold, in the 140 range, but it's still nearly 10 units lower, which means that my body has to do less to remove that. The best fat actually is like from bacon. It's really low. Most pork is very low, lower than tallow. Tallow and butter are very similar. And the cutoff is probably olive oil and avocado oil, sort of in the 130 parts, because they are a fruit. They come from a tree, and fruits do concentrate deuterium. But the avocado tree and the olive tree don't concentrate as much as some of the other plants. So that's the other thing. Now, some of the seed oils that are out there, the reason why they're so high in deuterium isn't because they're naturally high. Usually the PUFA component tends to not concentrate as much deuterium. So if you want to get then you'll have other issues like too much omega-6, other issues, and it's more potentially rancidity and things like that. It's just the way it is. They've got issues in those terms of oxidative stress and stuff like that. You don't want that because that is another pathway to damage. There's multiple pathways that I'm trying to explain. But when it comes to deuterium, when they process it, they actually put more hydrogen ions and heavy ions into the actual mixture. The industrial process does that. And so it goes up from, being where olive oil and avocado oil, which is cold pressed, extra virgin, at those sort of levels, and explodes up to nearly double that, to 255 parts per million. Water is 155 parts per million, and the cutoff is 130. And most people are indoors, they're not getting, any of this. So we're overloading our system massively, and that's what we're destroying our mitochondria, and we're actually reducing our capacity to repair tissue. So that's why we don't have long lifespan, but that's why we don't have long health span, but poor health span. That means whatever years that we're going to live after cell division, it's going to be in those later years very poor and very difficult, because we're reducing the capacity for our bodies to repair. So that's the importance of fat as an energy source superior to sugar, because sugar tends to have anything between 145 at certain types right up to 160, sorry. So 140 something right up, depends on the type. The more low carbohydrate type vegetables they are, which is, get much nutrition from those, it's because of the photosynthetic effect. They tend to have lower water, deteriorated water in them. Things like cactus, which is what the primarily the camels consume, but I think there are a couple of other animals. But that is basically very low. That's even lower than animal foods, animal fats. It's sort of around the 100 mark. It's very low. That's why camels never get cancer. They never show their age. They literally just live, long lifespan, and then when they stop cell division, they just drop dead. So if you want a long lifespan without any health problems, you need to keep your deuterium low. Simple as that. There's no other option. If you want your mitochondria to work the most efficiently and not to be damaged and to be maintained and not destroyed or impeded in any way from these heavy isotopes of, the getting the deuterium in the system, that's why I don't like hydrating. I don't care where your hydration is coming from, whether it's coming from one source of animal fat or you may be very lean. Obviously, you may not have enough fat stores to basically use. So you may have to consume a bit more animal fat as a consequence to basically get that additional hydration, because you can't get it from your own body. So as long as you keep insulin down, you can access that hydration and that energy source. So it's not only an energy source, a hydration. And for every gram, you get 1.1. You get 10% more. So you put 1 gram in, you put, let's say, a liter of fat from your body, and, some from eating, some from your body. That basically will produce 10% extra water. Fantastic, isn't it? It's a great system. So where sugar, on the other hand, dehydrates you, only produces about 0.44 of a gram or mils, which basically means you need to get the other stuff from elsewhere. So you basically start feeling thirsty. Traditionally, a tribal society wouldn't go to the tap water. They would go to plants, which leaves and stuff like that, and get the water out of that and put it into an ostrich egg, like the Sand people do and many other tribal people. But pretty much, I don't know whether I explained it well enough in detail, but it's, you don't want the, when you're looking at these hydrogen stable isotopes, you've got one here, hydrogen, which basically has a proton and an electron. This other one has a proton, a neutron. That neutron is what makes it double the weight. So that extra neutron is what fucks things up, which messes things up in the mitochondria. And when there's too much and the body can't get rid of those, you're basically damaging them, you're slowing them down initially, and it's too much, you start destroying them. And the more you destroy those, well, the less capacity you have to produce energy to repair them. And so you exacerbate the problem over time. So now there are some fatty acids like stearic acid and palmitate. Palmitate's very high in most animal foods. So it's good because that causes reverse electron transport. It encourages the cell. It sends a signaling, ROS signaling molecule telling the cell biogenesis, new mitochondria. So if you've got a lot of, it's a video that I want to do about how to use stearic acid as a way to biohack reverse electron transport and actually biogenesis more mitochondria, so you can actually clear out some of the old stuff and actually get more reparative capacity over time. So yeah, I'll go into it a bit more into a special video on that. So yeah, hope you got something out of it, Charlie. All the above. G'day, Bert. How are you, mate? Oh, Harry. GB News YouTube did a bit on veganism. It was nice to see comments debunked veganism with the same good knowledge and work community is doing to pay off, I think. Yes, look, as I said, I do my material and I say to people, just plagiarize it. I'm not making any money of it. It's just knowledge that I've acquired. I had my own health problems, and I just don't want people to go down the wrong paths and actually suffer. And so, yeah, spread the messages around. There's all those other videos. I'm going to do a bit more on the myths and falsehoods. So there'll be more information there. Those little type video types, 5 to 10 minutes, so we can sort of spread the stuff around. Obviously on blogs and stuff like that, just use the material that I've provided or some of the studies that I may link and stuff like that, and use them as ammo against these people, these misanthropists, because they are trying to affect our food supply. If they just did their own nonsense, they probably wouldn't be as much of a threat to the rest of us, but they're actually deliberately trying to, with their powerful friends, business friends, trying to change the food supply to basically kibbleize it, and they don't really care what consequence it has to our health, unfortunately. So we need to fight back. And I think I actually saw a video today, one of basically Sean Baker's, and he was talking about some of these sort of issues as well, that some people are just going to his channel and saying, oh, you know, this sort of stuff and all that. Why don't you just talk about meat and stuff like that? And well, you know, there's a whole lot of other forces out there trying to undermine our food supply. So you just can't talk about meat. You have to talk about these other things because they're important. We need to basically start pushing back and start emailing our politicians and different groups and saying, well, you know, this isn't on, and not take it lying down, so to speak. We need to basically challenge their pseudoscience, basically. Fair enough, Richard. Outdoor dried bedding as a joy. Refresh of sleeps. Yes. Indy, how are you? And hi again. Hanging about. G'day, Scotty. Hanging about for a short while before heading to work. Fair enough, mate. Might catch the end from there. Good on you. Thanks, mate. Work is a family. That always prioritize those things. You can always come back to these videos at any time. And if you need something answered like urgent, just put it in the comments here, and I usually answer most things pretty promptly, at least second day. Emails, I know it's only once a week. I've just sort of called that sort of a once a week thing. It just makes it easier. So I've noticed, like last Wednesday, there was a stampede of people sending me emails on Wednesday trying to get there. I'm going, yes. But anyway, I did manage to answer them. If I don't answer them, you'll have to wait till next week. It's sort of whatever's not it's in the unread thing. That's what gets looked at. You can only do so much in a day. Eventually, you have to get to sleep. He's a tough fold. I mean, we won't go into it, will we? Yeah, take care, mate. Take it easy. Don't push yourself crazily. I guess at least it's not worse. Having muscle issues, fatigue in legs seems to worsen with cycling to and from work. Yes. Are you basically maybe dehydrating yourself a bit? Are you getting enough salt? You may not be getting enough salt either, because salt can exacerbate things, salt loss as well. So keep that in mind. And salt can also affect fatigue issues as well. David, good to see you, mate. How's life in Spain? Oh, Dave's here as well. Just noticed. Dave, my mate. How are you? Good to see you. Yes, he made it. Yeah, I know. It's like that, unfortunately. I hope I got the, plenty of salt. Okay. Drop me an email. Richard, drop me an email. Yeah, drop me an email. Tell me exactly everything that you do and eat and stuff like that. Give me a bit of a rundown your exercise and stuff like that. What are you doing and stuff like that? So I've got a bit of a handle on what exactly may be going on. DJ Projectors, good to see you here, mate. Did your crumb, did they actually turn up, did they? Okay, you didn't say anything. Anyway, I got mine too. I actually did a cheese thing. Yeah, cheese thing with egg and pork crumbs. Yeah, really nice, actually. It was sort of like a snack type thing. So I'm going to do that again, give it another try, probably sometime this week. Really enjoyed that. So sort of just one egg I used and about 150 grams of cheese and I think it was 2 scoops of with the actual pork rinds and all that, and mixed it all up and just cooked it so the cheese would, that sort of mixed it all up and then sort of pressed it. That ended up quite nice, fried. Yummy. I have to do that again. So I didn't have enough time today. You wanted to go shopping, You got your treat. Where's mine? In Barcelona now, but back in the UK soon. You're going back to the UK, mate? Oh, okay. So Boris is going to quarantine you, mate. They may hold you down and jab you and do a whole lot of other things. It's Britain. Yes. Yeah, it's not like what it used to be. I have to say I did some of the horror stories I hear now in Britain when I was over there a couple of years back. Wasn't too bad, but now with all this crazy stuff, don't know whether I want to go back there. It's crazy enough in Australia, let alone New Zealand. God, there they've got actually a gulag in New Zealand. They come, take you out of your home and put you in the gulag. Spot's probably affected Bart. You know, he's hiding. He's in hiding on his farm, avoiding the gulag police. Yes, we know you love lamb. Got sick of lamb. We know you love lamb. I told her last time I got a whole lot of lamb. She looked at me. Where's mine? She goes. I told her to nick off. Yes, exactly. How you could? I actually, you know, I love pork, but I'm really cut. You know, if somebody was, I'd probably be because of the thiamine and the niacin, I would go on that basis with pork. But somebody puts a lamb chop in front of me and a pork chop, that's a hard one. That is a real hard one, you know. So they're really nice. Where somebody puts a beef, you know, a bit of beef there, I'll probably give it a miss. I'll go for either the lamb or the pork. So sometimes I get, I love it. I had one, when was it? It's over a month now. I can't remember the exact date. It's well over a month. And I literally went crazy on lamb. I had like 3 times the amount of lamb that I usually have, because I cooked a whole lot of lamb for the whole week. And I had my meal quite early, like at about 2 o'clock. And so by the time I got to 6 o'clock, I go, I'm still a bit peckish, and got stuck into it. And before I realized, I just cleaned out all the other stuff. And I'm going, oh, you're not going to have any food to take to work tomorrow, are you, you twit? So, but yeah, I did pee out on that day. DC, how are you, mate? Oh, that's fighting words from Hello Kitty. The fat of the lamb beef, particular flavour. It didn't bite. He didn't bite. Richard did not bite. Oh, thanks, mate. We would love that. We would appreciate that. We know it's not practical, but yes, the sentiment is appreciated. Me too. It's the only thing that I actually stock is lamb. I do have other things. I'll have a bit like, I've got some seafood in the fridge always. I've got some, beef, pork, whatever. Even some crustaceans sometimes. But the thing that I usually have, large parts of my fridge are, let alone I've actually also fermenting some lamb. Yes, I love fermented lamb. Yes, I know it's an acquired taste, but I do love it because it actually brings out that smell, that the lamby smell even more. It intensifies it. So it's like, an addiction. Yes, can't help it. Yeah, you probably need it. We got heaps. Yeah, we got plenty of lamb, plenty of beef, plenty of it's a big country. But look, even our Tasmania's, I don't know. Tasmania's the southern part of Tasmania has very small amounts. The majority of our beef does come from the northern part of Tasmania. So if you're in the north part of Tasmania, it's really cheap because you can get it just locally from the local farmers in many cases. But usually it goes through the butchers. There's a bit of a price put on that from wholesalers. So, but still, it is cheaper, down here. So, We do have quite a good production. Oops. Don't do that. On the stuff, the sort of those nutrients and all that, and the low deuterium, yes, I would have to side on that. On all those levels, it kicks ass, pork. But yeah, lamb is another favorite of mine. It's a balancing act for me. Deuterium levels in coconut water, it can vary. It can be higher than water. So water is 155 parts per million. It can even be higher than that. So it's really bad stuff. It's basically the coconut actually concentrates into the water, the actual deuterium into that water. There's an animal in the Polynesian area. I forget the animal, what it's called, but when it actually breaks the coconut, it basically gets rid of the water. It knows that it's the worst part. And traditionally, people used to not drink the water. They just used to basically break it, empty it, and basically use the stuff inside. It just became like everything becomes a product. People spin off a product, and it's just become another one of those products. And it's sort of a low carb product, but it's high in deuterium. So it's I'd rather drink tap water than coconut water. It's worse. So tomahawk steak. Oh, that sounds good. Damn. Come to Tassie. She'll cook us some steaks. Actually, we have some really, me and my brother Sean, we had some beautiful tomahawk steaks a couple of weeks back, so a bit longer than that. Yeah, anyway, some really nice ones. It wasn't too long ago. What am I saying? Yeah. So what was it, a week and a half or whatever? Anyway, they were really nice. They were very, very nice. So enjoyed those. Yeah, it's good to splurge out, that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, she gives me a hard time. I did give her some cheese today, so she hadn't tried the actual the Dutch Gouda, and she did like it. So there you go. I think she liked the other one a bit as well, but she was basically, which has got more nutrition, she told me. So I go, well, in terms of K2, you go the Gouda's the one. Yes. No, you can't. That's true. Yes. Plants, there are certain types of plants, like the green part of plants is what the tribal people use. They just squeeze it into an ostrich egg. So they get the hydrate. Now, that usually is about 132 parts per million. And sometimes it can be slightly lower than that. It depends. Like the cactus is down to about 100 and something. It can vary. So obviously the cacti, I think it's called cacti or cactus, cacti. That's is it the lowest? I may be lying on that one. I don't know if it's the lowest. It is very low compared to all the others that I've seen. Yeah. But that's how they usually get. As Mary said, they were going around, and when they did want some hydration, they actually just got the leaves and that's how they got the water out of the leaves. So that's how traditionally, and you actually see even chimps do that. Chimps will basically, so that's the sort of the traditional way, the ancestral way, in that regard. So we hydrate with fat and some water in these arid regions tends to be that. And we did sort of evolve in these sort of arid regions, sort of savanna type environments. So, it makes logical sense that we've used those methods. But the exact the exact plants that they actually use in Africa and all that, I've got no idea. Maybe next time I've got Mary on, I'll actually ask her to, but yeah, people are hydrating primarily with fat. And I actually noticed that when I did a 3-day dry fast recently. I forgot to tell you guys, but I did. And that was, God, I think it was about a month ago. I don't think I'd had a program on that Sunday at all. And that's why it didn't get told. And basically, I did a 3.5 day. I was trying to do a 4-day fast, but I just couldn't do it. I just got to that stage. I said, I got to get something into me. And I don't know whether I did mention, I may have mentioned it before. I think I may have on one of the other. And I can tell you when I drank the first sort of, it was actually milk, but it was cold. And it basically went down my throat. And basically it was like, oh, God almighty, it was cold. So, yeah, because it really changed. Because usually you've got, if you're using when you're using all this stuff, even when you're drinking water, you're basically, the esophagus is being utilized. So it has to have blood to circulate to basically work and operate and move all these things that are coming in, like all the other parts. So, when you do a dry fast, it sort of goes like into a hibernation nearly. So when you do it the first time, you go, oh, bloody hell. Sort of, it's just, yes, it's an interesting experience, Bjorn, I can tell you. I've done long fasts, wet fasts and stuff like that. But this was the first time I did dry fast. And I can tell you, it really takes weight off you very fast, I can tell you. So if you were to persist with this, yeah. But it's psychologically much harder. I mean, I still went to work. I was still working on those days. I was still going to work, still being productive. It wasn't affecting me in any regards. I was in ketosis and all that, but it just mentally, it was hard at night. So once I was stuck into work, I was fine. Once I got home, you got a fridge, and you basically avoid the fridge. So you watch different shows or you play computer games, and then you basically try and get to bed to try and, and that was the first night. Second night, it wasn't too bad. Third night, it wasn't too bad either. It was the fourth morning where I just really felt absolutely friggin' ravenous. I just, and I just succumbed. I said, oh, bugger it. So, yeah. But my body was being hydrated by my own fat. But, yeah. So it's not as if you can't go for long periods of time. This sort of nonsense. As long as you've got low insulin, the only time you can actually not go, see, the longest period somebody's done is 18 days, dry fast. The therapeutic one that is done in Russia is about 14 days. So it's not going to kill you. But the problem is, these people in Russia, they're very smart. What they do is they put people in ketosis first before they actually dry fast them. Never, I'll say it again, never dry fast unless you're in ketosis. Because if you can't tap, if you've got high insulin and you can't tap into fat to hydrate, that's when you may not survive after 3 days. That's what usually kills people. Dehydration comes about because you can't tap into your fat to get hydrated. That's the reason. Simple as that. Tribal people don't have that problem. It's only us modern kibble eaters that have that problem. That's why we're constantly, and because it dehydrates you, it only gives you about 0.44 percent of the water content, carbohydrates, which means that when you push all that stuff through the Krebs cycle, you basically end up with less water. So immediately the body goes, well, I'm only getting from basically catalyzing these food sources from carbohydrates, I'm only getting 0.44. I need more water. And it actually creates the urge for more water, for hydration. That's where it's coming from. But when you don't have all that carbohydrate and your insulin to glucagon ratio is 1.3, so your insulin is down in the more normal physiological ancestral levels, then you don't have these problems. And that's why we don't see this crazy water drinking attitude within the tribal populations. Our ancestors would have died out a long time ago if they required water to that level. It's nonsense. You hydrate with fat as long as you keep insulin down. I got a question. What would you say that intermittent fasting is necessary or optional for carnivore? Look, there are populations that actually consume food every 3 days. So to say that basically that fasting, and they are multi-generational, are able to breed, have children, grow old and everything else. So, and have very long lives compared to some other tribal populations. Fasting, and as we know, forced fasting like starvation amongst many Europeans, older people actually that lived through the war actually lived longer. So it had a benefit they've actually noticed compared to other age groups that were in the interwar years that had good nutrition and got into adulthood and didn't actually suffer, like in Britain and areas like that, but the ones on the European continent actually, yes, suffered more and had better results because of that. So fasting isn't going to harm you, and it's fine. Time restricted feeding, which is what intermittent fasting is. I call it time restricted feeding. I don't call it fasting. Fasting is 24 hours or more. The rest of it is just time restricted feeding. The end of the day, I think it's fine. It's good. I don't think you should be putting food down your throat continuously. And if you take a look at tribal societies, what do? They get up, they get a cortisol boost, get a bit of glucose produced for their glycogen stores. So that if they see an animal, they can run it down. And then basically they get out there. As they walk around, they're using basically the oxidizing fat from their own body, their adipose tissue. And then when they see the animal, they go in for the kill. They may end up using a bit of that glycogen that was given to them early in the morning. And then they'll eat a bit, drink a bit of the blood to get some of the electrolytes, salt. And they will basically then also cut a bit of the organ meats and all that to get some other their multivitamin for the day. And then basically they'll take the rest back to the tribe. They'll cook it up and people will eat it in the sort of afternoonish period and they will consume it over a couple of hours, the stuff that they've killed. And then they'll sort of relax around the fireplace, talk different things, and then go to sleep. But that's how traditional societies have done it. So it's usually, they probably have a snack sometimes, some stuff that they've had from the previous day, things that they've dried out, like dried out meats and stuff like that. They usually have that as a snack as they're walking, or other things they might find in the environment. So pretty much, we're sort of designed out of necessity for time restricted feeding because it just wasn't available. And once you've stuffed yourself for a couple of hours with a lot of protein and fat, your satiety is so high, you're not going to basically eat anymore. So that's pretty much the story of humans for many thousands of years until modern time when we became kibble eaters. So I think it's absolutely fine. That's how I tend to break my into time restricted feeding period at around 10:30 to 11. and then I'll have a sort of some beef jerky. I may have some cheese. I may have some, sometimes even take some soup to work. So I'll have some like a bone broth with a bit of meat in it. So stuff like that. Potentially may at lunch at 1:00 go down to the waterfront and go and have some oysters or something like that. And then the meal that I've prepared from home, I usually have at about 3:00, which a tribal person about 2 to 3:00 would be, by the time they got back to the campfire, they cooked it up. It'd be about 3:00 all the way to about 5:00 that they would be eating that sort of food. And that's the normal way. And I usually have mine between afternoon tea, as it's called. I just sit down and have a meal at the time. So that my major meal, like a big damn steak or something like that, or some other animal foods that I've put together and I've had and I've warmed up, and then I have it at work. So it's about, you could say, 1.5 meals a day, or one prime meal and a smaller meal snack earlier, as I break that, what they call fast, breakfast. So that's pretty much how I tend to do it, and it's way more comfortable in that regard. It's easy, it's not complicated, and it's much more closer to the circadian rhythms as a lot of other tribal populations do it. So, better drink my damn coffee because I'll get out of circadian mismatch because of the late drinking. Nice and creamy. Yummy, yummy. Oops. Yes, I can't get away. She spies on me. Also, we should consider choosing a different name for ourselves if we do dairy and eggs and alienate less people that way. Look, yeah, I mean, we could call it animal-based, like they call it plant-based. It would be probably better to call it animal-based. And I think actually it's a better thing to have a varied, sort of carnivorous diet. But we could call it animal-based or ancestral-based or some other way. Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really thought about it. In the past, it was zero carb, but I mean, everything, even meat has a bit of carbs. Even eggs have carbs. Everything has carbs, and nothing can ever be zero carbs. As nothing can be even zero. Even plants have a bit of fat. Nothing can be zero fat either, more or less. So it'll either be less of one or more of the other, but I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, DC, to be completely candid with you. I think there's probably a different way of actually putting it forward. Maybe, as they say, plant-based, calling us animal-based. So where carnivore may be a bit more, probably animal-based would be easier with women in particular. Sort of carnivore sort of has a sort of a connotation to it, where it sort of seems like it's sort of a masculine pursuit than anything else. So, and the carnivore community tends to be predominated by more men than women, from what I've noticed. So it's probably a good reason for that as well, because of probably the naming thing that may cause that. Climate where you guys are is not too much from where exactly. If it wasn't for the plague, I'd fly over for a nosy around. Would have been more possible. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing for us the other way. It's just a crazy period. I don't think any of us have lived this sort of it's a weird time to live in. I'll just say that. It's weird and crazy. It's just not normal. I mean, it's a damn coronavirus, like the common cold and the flu. It's just that maybe a bit worse, but that really, when you look at the statistics, is it? You compare countries. In some countries it's worse, some countries it's not. But if you look at the countries that it was worse, was the countries that had less people die from the flu the previous year, and the countries where it was at least not as bad, the flu had killed more older people in the previous year, so it killed less under COVID. I think it's just another respiratory infection, no different than the flu, than a severe flu, that can also kill. Why we've upended our society is because of really faulty epidemiology, again stemming from another sort of what I call the Corona Gate coming out of Britain again, as the Climate Gate again out of Britain. They seem to have a knack for this sort of thing. No wonder Bart left the place, because he was sick and tired of the pseudo nonsense coming out of that place. But it seems it's probably something like that, because they jumped the gun. I don't know. Is it a competition between them and the Yanks who can come up with the biggest bullshit? But it seems like that on a daily basis. The academics we're talking about, nice people in all these countries, but the academics seem to be basically like this little competition, who's on which side of the Atlantic, who's going to come up with the quickest bullshit. They need to go back to do what traditional science did. That means good research, and when they had something to present, then present it. Not this publish or perish attitude that exists now in academia and is corrupting science, because people are compelled, as Bart said. That's why I asked that question, because people need to understand what is compelling people to behave in this way. They're behaving in this way because they're scared they're going to lose their jobs, basically, and they just want to get anything out of there, whether it's garbage. And in many cases, to do real good science, it takes time. So you do garbage and you just put it out there. You justify it to yourself that, look, I'll be able to get tenure. I'll be able to run my own thing, and I'll be able to basically do my own really good studies. But by the time they get to that older age, they're already corrupted. They've already become, uninterested in causing waves anymore, because the young people are more rebellious than the older people, and so they just go with the flow because it pays well. There's a pension right after it. So it's too hard to fight the system, and that's what happens. And they get very much corrupted and they lose their integrity in a sense. It's an unfortunate reality. It's a crazy, crazy situation we're living through, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any bloody better. Ham juicing. Sounds good. Ham juice. Oh, yes. Squeeze the ham. Yes. Yes, that was about the other thing. Yes, ham juicing. Nice one. You're welcome, mate. So if you're slim and thirsty, drink some milk. Exactly. Is there any consideration need to energy in the fat you consume? The lowest deuterium fat usually comes from pork and fish. Fish are actually even lower. The fat from fish is even lower than that of pork. Land animals, it's the lowest is basically pork. Now, there is a case for both pork and fish. Pork because of the arachidonic acid, and fish for the DHA because, unfortunately, the blue light spectrum and the electromagnetic fields that are generated by our modern, the wiring in our homes, everything around us creates magnetic fields, and the photonic energy is in a number of these spectrums. So you are bombarded by a number of these spectrums in particular that tend to degrade DHA. And that has an effect on other systems. So it seems that we require more of it in that regard compared to the past, where we could just eat ruminant animals and that was fine. So it seems that we need a bit more in our modern world, the closer you are to this sort of photonic energy. So yes, so I would say balance ruminants with a bit more fish than traditionally most carnivores probably have no fish. I would say I usually have fish once or twice a week, and the rest I get my DHA, the rest from grass-fed animals or foraging pigs. So most of that, I even bought some bacon today. It's smoked. It's foraging, free-range foraging pigs, and it's nitrate-free. So it's not that that's a big issue for me, but that's what it is. And so that's and I'll literally cook the whole lot and just eat it. It's about 300 grams, and I'll just pig out on it, as one would say. And that's all. That's actually the lowest deuterium of the land, and that's the lowest. Bacon is actually the lowest in deuterium of all the parts of the pork. So if any part of the pork you eat, the lowest is because there are differences in deuterium levels in different parts of the animal food. So the same animal can concentrate deuterium in different quantities in different parts of the body. The parts that they make pork off, the lower parts, where the more fats are and all that, that tends to be lower in deuterium. So pork belly, very low in deuterium. So I usually eat those sort of things, and they are very low and really good in terms of hydration as well. But I've still got a bit of adipose that I can still tap into. Let's put it that way. I'm not like ripped at this stage. Let's put it that way. I've still got plenty of mitochondrial damage that I'm healing over time. And, when I sort of stopped doing those things back 10 years ago, I was a heavy drinker, a very heavy smoker, cooked everything in seed oils, ate a lot of refined crap. I used to have pizza boxes in my fridge. I had an extremely poor diet. I was 20 kilos heavier, and I did plenty of damage. Let's put it that way. I looked older than I look now, and I'm 10 years older now. So I've actually reversed some of that damage, but I've still got quite a bit to reverse to get my mitochondrial efficiency. I've cleared up. I had severe glassing in my left lung. My doctor feared that it could become cancerous, but it hasn't. It's sort of receded and reduced, and now it's down to about 18 to 20 odd % or whatever is left. And hopefully my next test that I need to go and do, I'll probably do it on my break. Can't be bothered at the moment. And I'll do it the following week, and then I'll find out whether it's how much is the rest of it's cleared out or not. So I have dropped my taurine supplementation from 5 down to 2 grams. Now, if it hasn't shifted, it will have confirmed to me that basically I need to go back to a higher taurine level to break down the remaining of the fibrotic tissue. But maybe not. I don't know. What I have noticed is my functioning of my lungs is much better, so I can actually walk up steeper sort of hills and stuff like that, or even run up some steep hills, and I'm not losing my breath like before. So I think it's better, but I don't know how much better. I can only hope it's much better. It's cleared up, So I've been working over time diligently trying to, I know, anyway, Hello Kitty usually reminds me about when I do my cheats. What you do it? So sometimes I'm human. I do succumb doing stupid things with some deuterium-rich foods, but it's a very rare thing nowadays. I try and discipline myself as much as possible, not always successfully, But I've only got myself to blame. I know what it does to me, but and it does slow down my progress, but I'm aware of that. So, but generally, I'm moving much better in that regard. At the end of the day, yeah, as you said, it's really, are you ultra slim? Yeah, add some more milk in. If you're not, and you've got a bit, take it off your body. So in that regard, so I usually, if somebody wants to lose the sort of weight, just go on just steak. Don't use butter, don't use cream, don't use any of this. Just get the fat on the steak and the rest of the fat from your body. It's simple as that. And you'll still have minerals and vitamins and all that, fat-soluble ones. You'll only have to worry about the water ones, and most of the animal foods are pretty good in the water-soluble vitamins anyway, steaks and stuff like that. So that's the sort of stuff to consider. Yep, much better to hydrate. And once you actually do it and your antidiuretic hormones activate, you notice you don't have the issue. You'll probably urinate, 3 times a day. And it's not a lot of urine either. So there's just small amounts of urine that are coming out. And it's just basically getting rid of that deuterium rich. And my urine never really got very dark. So it's still quite light in some cases. And I'm sort of going, must be that coffee that I had. So at work, that basically diluted it a bit. If you take a look at animals, take a look at a wild animal or a goat. I used to herd goats, my auntie. And when you see the animal, it'll actually piss very yellow, concentrated urine. We're not designed, this sort of nonsense that you need to basically piss clear white urine is just absolute ridiculous. No animal does. Not even the chimps. It's ridiculous. It's just basically marketing, just crap. Somehow we got manipulated. Simple as that. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Oh, yeah, it's talking about ham. I got some really thick ham pieces in the Dad gave me. That thick. I'm not kidding you. It's basically that large. It's just massive, these big, massive slabs, and they're that thick. I'm not freaking kidding. And there's 2 of them in there. I'm going, I'm going to take those to work anyway with my cheese and going to pig out. So, yes. Yeah, check the person out. You never know, they may have some insights to certain things. Always looking. Yes, sulfur is also an important thing to increase some sulfur in there as well. So anyway, you send me the email and I'll send you some of the information. Good idea, Dave. Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, it's Australia's the same. New Zealand guy, it's just gone. They're really gone crazy on these quarantines and these restrictions and lockdowns. Luckily, we haven't had just other than that first lockdown ages ago. We haven't had any really major things at the moment, and so we haven't ended up really, in a big mess. Where we've got people monitoring and running after people and doing all this sort of stuff, which just becomes crazy. Do you think veganism? G'day, Peace and Plants. You think veganism causes my IBS? More than likely. I had my appendix taken out and Michaelis diverticulum taken out. I have a lot of IBS triggers with plant foods. Look, animals like us, we don't have a cecum. The appendix is the cecum. That's where we store our gut microbiome. So you've just lost your gut microbiome storage. by taking out your appendix. That's what your vegan diet. You're an ex-vegan, but or still, I don't know what your status is. If you're a vegan, that's probably what is likely, because your gut microbiome, we used to have a cecum like the chimps, but even the chimps, they consume up to a ton of meat, but they don't get their energy. They get their energy from plants. They don't get their energy from animals, because the animals, they just get their protein, the lean animals that they, even though they consume massive amounts. So it's very different. And yeah, I do have a video on that as well. It's in the Bart K series, and I've also on my playlists, one of my chats where I talk about that, and I also talk about the chimps that have actually evolved hunting techniques, who are in a savanna environment, very similar to what our early ancestors would have been forced to do as well when the environment was changed. So check that out as well. You'll get a bit of an insight. But getting back to your situation, yes, I would say a lot of these issues, I find a lot of ex-vegans, ex-heavy plant eaters that are more susceptible, more vulnerable to oxalate toxicity, to a number of these other issues relating to gut microbiome imbalances. I do have a video on Prevotella, high levels of Prevotella that usually a lot of plants do increase all the interleukins. Inflammation goes up quite a bit. There's a video on that on my myths and falsehoods of veganism, so you'll get a bit of information on that to understand some of the effects. Paul Mason, you should check out Dr. Paul Mason out of Sydney University. He's a researcher, scientist, and understands a lot of this sort of stuff. He's also looked into fiber, and it's got a video. So if you go Paul Mason on fiber, you'll actually see where he talks about a study where this was done in Sydney, and it was the only study ever done in the world where they actually looked at an intervention group and a non-intervention group, and the group that they took, they reduced fiber in different groups, and all the IBS, all the symptoms went down. The group that they eliminated all fiber actually became symptom-free. So that's the only controlled study we have in the world, one single study, but it was a controlled clinical study. There is no other thing. Free living stuff, who knows what people put in questionnaires. Epidemiology is just nonsense. 90% of epidemiological studies can't even be replicated. Can't be replicated, because basically when they try and actually replicate, they get the wrong result, because they are food frequency questionnaires. People lie, people can't remember, people misrepresent, people have biases. That's why you do clinical stuff, to control all the different components and factors. When you do it in those sort of clinical studies, it's quite clear that plants do not help. They harm you. So a lot of these problems that you've had, Alex is another person. Alex has had some similar health issues to you in terms of diverticulum, and he's actually had far more radical surgery on his colon. Let's put it that way. It's up to him whether he wants to discuss that with you on this channel at the moment, on this live stream. But yes, he had severe issues, and he had a high plant-based diet in the past. And most people that I've come across that have got a lot of issues, and also oxalate issues, like oxalate toxicity, oxalate sort of dumping that happens when you come off. So if you've been on a high plant diet, I do recommend highly that you get a food grade citric acid, and you basically consume it for the next couple of years as you're on a carnivore diet, if you've moved on to a carnivore diet, or reduce plants, in order to deal with this problem, because you will release a lot, and it will basically potentially can damage your kidneys, can damage other parts of your colon even further, as you're releasing a lot of these sort of things. I usually say to people, if you ever remember eating a kiwi fruit, the kiwi fruit has got these needle type things. You'll actually get a sensation, like a sensation on your tongue. That tingly sensation, that's oxalates, those little stabbing things. It's not some sort of, oh, this is really a nice tingling feel. No, that's actually inflammatory oxalates basically digging into your tongue. So not a good thing. So there's a lot of, in the past we used to consume more raw dairy, and that raw dairy would basically, the lectins and all these other things would be broken down by the lactoferrin, would be bound, and they wouldn't cause as much problems. We used to ferment a lot of things, so we break down a lot of these anti-nutrients, and we also used sufficient dairy to bind. And because we had a lot of good vitamin D level status, we also kept our mucosal barriers tight, all those junctions, so we wouldn't get leaky gut. Plus, we didn't have a whole lot of glyphosate and a whole lot of emulsifiers that breaks down that barrier, which we have in a lot of our processed foods, unfortunately, today. So there's a lot of issues. Check out some of my stuff. You'll get a bit of information. I talk a lot about a lot of these things on my live streams. I don't know how much time you've got, but there's other videos that I do discuss some issues. I do intend to do more stuff on some of these gut-related issues. I've done on stomachs and stuff like that. I do have a day job, so I can only do so much. Enjoy, I hope. I think I read somewhere, but not sure. I think in Wikipedia that galactose is dangerous for the body. Tell that to the Maasai, multiple generations, and never had a health problem compared to everyone else. It's just nonsense. It does go through. I mean, it does go through certain types of enzymatic pathways. Unlike glucose, we'll go to glucose 6-phosphate directly to that enzyme that then goes through down to pyruvate through glycolysis. It has to go through a number of steps in itself to basically be converted to glucose 6-phosphate. And then it's like glucose will go down. They say it converts to glucose, but it's not glucose. Glucose converts to glucose 6-phosphate directly. That goes through a number of enzymatic pathways, but galactose is not an issue. And lactose is made of galactose and glucose. I don't know who comes up with this garbage. It's a sugar like nothing, everything else, carbon-based with some hydrogen ions on it. It's the end of the day, through glycolysis, we basically produce some ATP. We lose some energy going through glycolysis as well. And, you get a bit of ATP out of that. You get a bit of ATP. But the majority of ATP, you literally comes out of the mitochondria. That's where you have to generate water, deteriorated water via the Krebs cycle, the citric cycle. So, citric acid also will help with that as well if you need it. And then basically, we create the metabolic water, which is what I've discussed earlier about deuterium and metabolic water. I'll go back into it. But basically, I mean, where's the issue? I don't know. Send me a link. I want to look at it. I want to debunk it because it's just crap. I've heard a lot of crap on milk. And I've pulled it apart many times. Even like I had today somebody on Bart's thing that was talking about estrogen. And I reminded people that basically you can have a large glass of milk, and get 6 nanograms of estrogen. 6. 6. That's it. Nanograms. Men produce 53,000 nanograms per day. Yeah, I know, it's a drop in the bucket. It's irrelevant. But there are people out there peddling, oh, estrogen's going to kill you. Yeah, it's going to grow a horn on your head. You'll be a unicorn. It's ridiculous. I don't know where people come up with this nonsense. It's absolute excrement. Women, 630,000 nanograms per day. They're worried about 6 nanograms from a glass of milk, a large glass of milk. I mean, give us a break. It's just, I don't know. People are just, it's weird and wacky out there, I can tell you. I've been in many gastro docs and can't explain why I experience stomach pain. Check out my, sometimes I had a lot of tests and they say it's IBS. It's basically, let me just bring you up on a little secret. I was actually talking with Hello Kitty today about my some time ago experience when I had gone in and done endoscopy tests because I had certain pain and all that, and I couldn't work out what the bloody hell it was. And eventually, the doctor put me under, down the throat and up. Check the stomach, check the actual my colon. Absolutely. And here's my sister. She had polyps. They had to remove them. She was an ex-vegetarian. I had absolutely, I had been, let's say, low carb for a number of years, which helped, which would have cleaned up and repaired a lot of this sort of situation. I didn't go from this. What I suspect, if I'd gone back and done a test when I'm in my sad dieter days, it would have been much worse. But a lot of that was cleared up in a more animal-based diet, and it was just perfectly clear. Doctor couldn't work it out. I did eventually because I had an oxalate dump, and I got foamy urine. And I can tell you, once I took high levels of citric acid, all went away. So it was actually my oxalate dumping that was actually causing it. And that persisted on and off for, about nearly 3 years. So this was before I was even started my YouTube channel. So I went through some bloody hellish trying to work out and, looking at PubMed and trying to find studies and trying to understand what the hell was going on. And then I came across a number of people in the ancestral community, in the low carb community, that were starting to talk a bit about this, and then did my own research to try and understand it better and realized how nasty oxalates are. It sort of went through that. I think Bart had a similar experience. He mentioned it once on one of his live streams, but he never went into any details like I haven't. But it was a very nasty experience. And somebody's approached me that's close to me and actually said that they've had pain, just above their bladder. And sometimes oxalates can actually go through. Sometimes you can actually have them very smaller, so they don't get lodged in the kidneys, but they go right through the bladder and they get lodged, and they can get lodged in the urethra. And as a consequence of that, can create a lot of pain. So that's another sort of symptom, or on the sides of the bladder. So the bladder actually has got this pericellular matrix, and it creates a negative charge, which actually repels everything. So it actually is sterile, completely sterile. So what can happen is you can have oxalate that can come in and lodge in there. And when it lodges, a lot of people don't realize, E. coli, that nasty little bugger, it can hitch a ride on the, most people don't know. And I don't think anybody's actually talked about it in the low carb community. I haven't heard it. I saw it. I read it in a study. It can hitch a ride on basically oxalate. So E. coli or some pathogenic bacteria and then they can go into the bladder and give you a bladder infection, and also cause other issues, inflammation, localized inflammation in that sort of sterile environment. So they are nasty things. And unfortunately, I used to, in my keto days and when I was trying to be healthy, had a period there that I was consuming like 150 grams of spinach every day for breakfast with bacon and eggs. And I had accumulated shitloads of oxalate. So I went through some hellish moments, and I've still in recent times had a couple of little episodes, and that's why I keep basically citric acid available at home to deal with that sort of stuff. Yeah, so you could have something like that as well from a lot of plants. is some people actually will get it through like kidneys, into the bladder and all that, and some people excrete through the actual feces. And I usually say to people, are you feeling like cutting sensations through your gut? Are you basically, when you're, going to the toilet and feces are coming out, are you feeling like a tingling, like a rough sensation on your anus? If you are, that's probably oxalate coming out. So, yeah, ways of diagnosing it. But then you also may need to do some tests. I'm in the lamb phase. Fiona. That's why we love you. Ah, yes. Don't we? We have our moments. I have to, yeah, I have my pork moments and my, yes. Yeah, bacon. Oh, yeah, I know. Isn't it wonderful? All these beautiful animal foods. Yes. I've thought about eating eggs, but had a hard time transitioning. Eggs are really good unless you've got some susceptibility. You should consider using eggs in that regard, because they're also high quality protein. They do have a lot of the collagen type in the whites, have whole eggs always because of iodine. As long as you're having a whole egg, you'll only inhibit about 27% of biotin, which isn't a lot because there's a lot of biotin in eggs. It's even with that small level of inhibition. That's in the raw form. If you're cooking them, not an issue at all, like hard boiled and all that. And don't worry about it. There was an old geezer, 25 eggs a day for multiple years, outlived his parents. His father died at 40, his mother at 76, and he was 88 years of age. And he was in pretty good health, and they thought that they couldn't understand it. It's like typical doctors. Oh, what's wrong? Why is this person? And his own doctor knew him for many years, and his friends as well. And he sort of claimed that he had the addiction for multiple decades. So, yes, definitely won't harm you. Let's put it that way. I don't know how he could actually have done it for so long, but that's what they used to deliver him every single day. They'd deliver him, a carton, 2 cartons of eggs every single day. He was in basically a nursing home because, his partner passed away and all that. He was on his own. So, yeah, and every day they used to do sometimes 30 eggs. So that's why it was 25 eggs on average. They calculated it as, but it was 24 or more eggs a day. That's what I call an addiction to animal foods. So it's a good thing to actually get. The other thing is you can use a leucine supplement. Leucine, I have done a video on leucine. That's what actually causes muscle protein synthesis. Leucine is also good for getting more protein, so taurine and leucine. So if you can't manage too much products at this time, look at crustaceans, look at eggs, look at dairy, and get some taurine and leucine in there in order to actually force more muscle protein synthesis. So the ability to basically utilize that to repair a lot of this sort of tissue. So as you're struggling with transition, use these supplements. I don't usually recommend supplements because they are higher in deuterium, anything that's processed, but you're not using massive amounts. I would consider using a couple of, at least getting in 3 grams of leucine and about 2 grams. Now, if you've got blood pressure issues, remember taurine does reduce blood pressure. So you've got to be very careful. So you'd have to start with 1 gram, then get adjusted, then 2 grams. But otherwise, 2 grams and 2 grams. It's taurine will help with most gut things. It'll emulsify so if you haven't been having a lot of animal products, your gallbladder may not be functioning better. It will emulsify the actual the bile, which means it will flow much better. So you'll have less issues and all that in terms of gallbladder function. You may need to consider also MK4. You'll find that in things like brie, in Gouda, Camembert, things like that. But you can also buy a supplement for a while to get your levels up, and that also helps to it has a lot of regulatory things with bioproduction plus recycling of bile as well, with a number of things. Without going, I've talked about it in other videos, but so you get those sort of things into you. That will help get the proteins transported, because it's also not only an antioxidant like in your heart, like taurine can be in your brain, breaks down beta amyloid. It's primarily in animal foods, but you probably had deficient to some extent. Because of a lot of the compounds, the anti-nutrients tend to deplete sulfur in humans, and sulfur is very important for a lot of biological functions. Also for keeping, for hair, the keratin, the binding, your nails and all that, have like nails which are pinky like that and really in good nick, that sort of stuff. So you need all those combinations in that early transition period to basically get your body to function a bit better. So those are the two supplements that I would actually add in: leucine and taurine, with trying to get more animal foods in as you're transitioning. Drop me a line, give me a bit of additional information. I'll give you a few additional pointers. What lottery? Oh, well, God, you guys are talk about different other things in the background. I guess it's true. That was probably the previous one that I was talking about. Oh, Angela's here as well. Hello, Angela. Good morning to you as well. Good to see you here. I've missed live stream shows for too long. Looking forward to the next few hours. Chat. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. A bit confused, as I am in this still live while walking in the street of Barcelona. You're being facetious. Oh, my treasure's safe at home. Oh, God. Yes, in your little hut. Trouble, good to see you here. Oh, yes, back for a second dose. Why not? Why not? Always a pleasure. Yes, David. Yes, very much so. Harry, in Croatia, we have a lot of domestic bottled waters. Okay. Any of them from sort of mountainous springs? Usually, if it's from a mountainous spring, it'll be better. It usually tends to be lower in deuterium. But if it's from sort of lower areas, maybe not. Depends where the source is. It's all really, yeah. Is there a way to guess the deuterium levels without doing a lab analysis? Not that I know of. Yes, I have no idea about. I think you have to do a lab analysis. That's why the problem I'm going to do my video on the 18th. I'm going to do one on deuterium and just show some of the stuff. And all the stuff comes from all these different sources. Because people say, where's your source? Well, they're coming from all different sources. There's stuff in Hungarian, there's stuff in Russian, there's all sorts of sources all over the place. And there are some variations. So I will actually show the ranges for some things, because they seem from country to country, there are a few variations of what they've actually measured. So it's a hard thing to determine. So I play it safe and say, well, try and keep on those foods that tend to be on the lower side. You're more likely to be, less likely to make it be at risk in that regard. Now, let me just find the... So this one here, let me just share this. So this one here is from France. So it's from the French Alps. It's a natural spring water. It doesn't have any sparkling anything in it. It's just natural spring water and all that. And that is in the low 140 parts per million. So it's nearly 10 parts per million less than tap water. And look, depending on the tap water, can be less than that. It can be like 5 or 6 times less, or up to 10 times, because some tap water can be, like 157 or 158 parts per million, can be even higher, depending on the location on the planet. Generally speaking, it's around 155 on average, but it can vary slightly lower or slightly higher. So we're talking about averages here and ranges. But this one here, you can get in supermarkets in Australia. You can get in supermarkets in Europe. I have no idea about North America. Then you've got the other one, the Italian, the Pellegrino one, which is also a sparkling natural spring water. That is slightly higher by, I think, 2 or 3 parts per million from memory. It's a while that I've looked at the data. It's been a while. I'll be looking at it recently. In due time, I'll be getting into that folder and looking at the stuff to when I do my video. But at the moment, I'm just off my, may be slightly inaccurate. So if I am, don't take it as gospel. But it is lower than tap water, and it is lower than, and I actually bought another bottle today as I was with Hello Kitty shopping, and that's what's in this coffee. So I use it for my coffee basically. So I have slightly lower deuterium water compared to the tap water. So that is how that basically goes. So yeah, without testing it, no idea. And there are not many places around the world that can actually do the testing because they don't know how to do it. And you would have to send it to, there's a lab in America, there's a lab in Hungary, and there's a lab in Russia, I think. I think it's in Moscow. So there's not many places in the world that actually do this sort of stuff. And the rest are actually research labs that do it, and they don't actually do it as a service for anyone. So it's really damn hard. You could probably Google the brands and see whether anybody's actually tested them. That's all I could suggest. So Google the Croatian brands, DC, and then next to the name of the brand that you're Googling, put deuterium. See what happens. You may get lucky. Somebody may have already coughed up the money, done the test, and provide you the information. So you could get very lucky. Never know unless you try. So living in the desert, juicing cactus, and being out in the sun all day equals living forever. Let's not go that far, Bjorn. There's still a certain level of cell division, but obviously the less senescence you've got, the less damaged cells you've got, that means it'll take them longer slightly to cell divide. So they may not, let's say that I may not cell divide today, they may cell divide in a couple of weeks' time because they're in greater health. So you may get a decade or maybe a bit more than a decade, but everything counts. I mean, a decade or two can make the difference between living in your 90s or living over 100. So yes, so definitely not living forever, but living longer. Yes. If we were ancestral from birth, it could be a different story. I've been looking into research when it comes to molecular, not only quantum biology, but also some of the molecular science in terms of some of the enzymatic pathways, some of the protein structure integrity, because the integrity of protein structures is very important in this game. And looking at some of that stuff, if we can maintain good integrity of protein structures in the body, there is a potential, there's a theoretical potential of living out to 150, maybe even 200 or more. So not that I want to put a dampener on this, but there's so many things in our environment currently that are really conspiring against that. My aim is to try and understand the best ways to circumvent some of this stuff, to reduce some of this stuff, to bring this information to you guys, because I want to live longer, and I suspect you guys want to live longer. It's not only living healthier, but also living, getting a few extra years and sort of slowing down the aging process, slowing down the deterioration of cells, and slowing down the senescence. Still looking at some of the experimental information on fisetin and some other senolytics as well. I haven't yet decided to change my protocol on the senolytics or whether to add some other components in the non-fisetin, because I don't want to use fisetin generally all year round because of the effects on mTOR. So we don't want to have too much because it's like inducing more catabolism, which isn't a good thing. But I'm trying to find solutions for those in between. So when you're not doing the fisetin, which is a much more stronger way of, and also trying to work out that can we safely go to higher doses to basically get more bang for our bucks for those 5 days at the beginning of the month. So I'm still looking into it, because that would potentially could accelerate the knocking off of senescent cells without really putting us at any risk. So I'm just currently investigating some of this sort of stuff. I don't like taking risks because I nearly got caught up ages ago. I was looking into the NAD pathway, and a lot of people miss the CD38 and the protective mechanism, why it suppresses in NAD with the senescent cells and stuff like that. And I brushed over it initially, and then I looked back at it and I go, that's a protective mechanism. It's not there for just accidental. And I realized that, and I go, okay. And that's when before I was willing to play around with like 0.5 gram or a bit more sometimes of niacin. And then when I sort of started looking at that, I'm going, no, it's got to be 300 and below. And 300 has to be the real maximum, not this like 1 gram that other people are doing 1 and 2 grams with NMN and NR and all these other stuff. I thought that was way too dangerous. And nowadays, I've actually dropped back to 125, which got by those niacin tablets. And I split them in half, the 250, and it's 125, and I have about 125. And I stick to that lower level, and try and actually reduce the CD38 with senolytics, eliminating those things, and then trying to push the other pathways so they can rebalance. Because really, when you've got very few senescent cells, you're not producing a lot of CD38, you're producing a lot of NAD. That's why when you're young, you got energy to burn, baby. You're really jazzed up as a young person. More senescent cells, more CD38, more impeding of this system. And you end up like Mary, who's changed her diet like I have, like you have, Bjorn, and all that. But she's in her mid-40s and she can't keep up with an 80-year-old Maasai who from birth has not been damaging and maintained very high mitochondrial density. So that person has low senescence, low damaged cells, has good levels of energy. So all that's going to happen to that person is they're going to go through life and eventually at some point there can be no more cell division and they're just going to drop dead. And she even met, remember that old lady that was over 100 and she could jump up and down? Over 100. She was just leaping and jumping on the spot. I mean, some young people can't do that in our society. This is what I'm saying. We have done a lot of damage trying to repair, reverse, and redirect a lot of those and get things to work properly and all that is complicated shit, which I'm still trying to understand. I understand a lot, but not enough. I don't give a shit that scientists out there are clueless because they're just wasting their time doing junk research. I want to find out these things. And I'm trying to understand by seeing, sometimes scientists have done actual research without realizing that they've understood a pathway, but don't realize that pathway, those enzymes are actually interacting with these other pathways. And when you look at these studies, I usually have epiphany moments and I go, oh, I just noticed that. I just noticed this. And sometimes I bring it up and sometimes I do my videos or sometimes I bring it up in conversations. It's really just seeing these little bits of connections. And so, yeah, I could go through my whole life and miss a lot of things. It's just a reality. Hopefully I don't miss too many things and I can help myself and others live a bit longer, but we'll see how that all plays out. No guarantees with this sort of stuff. Yes, such is life. Potentially, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. We know that when I see people over 100 years old in some of these tribal societies who haven't been killed by some snake, some disease, some infection because they got a cut or because they died due to infant mortality. And I see these people and they're still robust at that age when people in their 50s are decrepit in our society, can hardly walk or get around, have got knee problems and all sorts of issues. And I see these people and I'm going to myself, shit, and these people aren't even trying. They're just living in an ancestral environment and keeping it clean all their life. So I don't know. So now we haven't been keeping it clean. So, yeah. Can we clean up the mess that we've created? Some of it maybe. How much? No idea, mate. No idea. It's going to be an interesting journey. If you want to follow me, I know you do, and a number of others. Maybe we'll find out some of this sort of stuff. I sometimes pose things out there for you guys, and you guys sometimes go away and actually look at some of the stuff, and sometimes you come back with some curly questions, and I go, interesting. I didn't think about that angle, So what I'm trying to do is encourage you guys to basically look into some of this sort of stuff yourself as well. Interact with me, with others, and some way we may find some nuggets of gold here and there, and do a lot of positive things for ourselves. So yeah, very important. Anyway, Charles, g'day, mate. Hey, how are you? Any info on no causal mechanisms for hair thinning and receding hairlines? There are multiple things. Now, I've actually shown people on my site. I'm not going to go now and show it. People know that if my regulars here, they can confirm. I basically have genes for graying of hair, photosensitivity, but also for thinning and receding and all that. I mean, my hair now, as you can see, look how friggin' thick it is. As you can see, it's really thick and all that. My barber keeps on telling me, and I have genes, and I had an alopecia in the past. I had alopecia, like this frontal part was receding and thinned out. There are a number of things that do play in this regard. There is some issues that nobody actually really talks about. I haven't heard anyone talk about, but there is research, really old research, showing that under the skin you can actually get, in some people for a number of different reasons, we don't really know, but you can get certain calcifying deposits, and these calcifying deposits can have an effect on the growth of hair in those locations. So I did very high doses for my heart to decalcify soft tissue. So it's a number of things, So the MK4 that I used decalcified not only my heart, but also seems to have decalcified my scalp and helped with the alopecia there. Plus, taurine and MSM, sulfur amino acids, they tend to bind keratin. So you end up with strong nails and strong hair, and it grows like mad. And yeah, it's costing me more money in terms of my barber. He's a Middle Eastern guy. He's from Syria, and he goes, "Again, here, Harry. It grows too long. He goes, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a carnivore." I told him, he laughed. He said, "You eat? Is that all you eat?" And I said, "Yeah." And it just grows on bloody hair. The zinc, the sulfur, and all that sort of stuff really helps in the growth. He says, "Really? I didn't know that." He goes, "Yeah." Well, I said, "Look," I said, in some cases, multiple generations, you've got multiple generations, like Bart K has, he's bald. Now, it takes like 3 generations to establish certain genetics. And once those genes turn on, they can be permanent. Very hard to switch off genes of these sort. You need like multiple generations of clean diet, and you won't be the beneficiary, let's put it that way. But if you've still got most of your hair and you're just receding and all that, it could be nutrient deficiencies and also some scalp calcification that could also cause this issue. I had some scalp calcification, and I suspect that helped as well eliminate that frontal part in particular, where I had most of I had like deposits. You could actually touch the deposit, like thick deposits, and they went away. I've still got a bit in the middle. I've got this little bulb here, and it doesn't really, I don't know what hasn't broken down. It's just still there. And it's just, and that's the only spot that there's fewer hairs in that spot, and only that. It's like minuscule tiny. Because of all the other hair, you can't even see it. You have to really dig in to notice it. Even the barber didn't know about it until I told him. But I'm aware of it. But it's actually shrunk, but not all of it's gone away. And I don't know, because it's the volume. It's the it's not close. The other parts were more closer to the skin, where the body can't really remove it, or maybe only surgically you can actually pop it out. Don't know. It's not a big priority. I'm not that concerned about it. But I do have genes for baldness. Many of people in my family are bald on my father's side. My father's got a lot of bald patches here and there. My uncle does, his youngest brother. My cousin has quite a bit of alopecia, and his brother as well has a lot of balding as well. My mother had severe hair thinning as well. So it's on both sides of the family. And I've got the genetics of some people, but I've been able to keep it at bay, even the grey hair. And I think that the diet does have a lot to do with suppressing some of these genetics in that regard, epigenetically. Eggs are very important. Biotin is really important for collagen and for the hair follicles, and also the skin around the hair follicles, because it can actually become flaky. Biotin stops that. Really important. So it improves the actual circulation, improves the integrity of the actual surface of the scalp. So if you're eating steak and eggs, you're getting the biotin and all that. I would get an MSM sulfur from Jarrow. It's produced, I can't remember Jarrow whether they produce their MSM in, so M for Mary, S for Sam, M for Mary. So MSM sulfur. And for Jarrow, the company, and I would basically take a gram or two of that a day. I don't know how old you are. If you're in your middle age or older, I'd probably take a gram of taurine as well. That would help. At least it would reduce the depletion rate. The other thing that depletes that depletes sulfur amino acids quite severely is oxalate. So if you've had a heavy plant-based diet in the past, Charles, then that can also basically deplete your sulfur. There's a number of other extracurricular activities like, smoking, drinking, and all those sort of wonderful things that also can have an effect in sulfur. That would be my increase your protein, increase your biotin through eggs, increase your general nutrients. The big ones are zinc. Iodine can play a role as well. So iodine, zinc, selenium, you find those in eggs and organ meats and in seafood. Crustaceans are very good, like mussels have got a lot of these minerals and trace minerals. So very good source for those is mussels. Having a mussel soup every week. I was doing that for a while back then as well. So it was one of my protocols, mussel soup every week. I used to use with the mussels, I would also use like chicken broth, and I would combine also some eggs in that. And I do a thing that my sister does. I learnt this from my younger sister, cooks it all up, and then beats, one or two eggs, depending on how much you want in terms of egg. It's usually one egg, and basically just puts warm water into the egg bowl and keeps on beating it until it brings it up to the same temperature, then combines it so it doesn't solidify, and you can actually create like an eggy type soup. Bit of lemon juice, perfect. So you can have some of that in terms of food, but really it's getting the nutrients up. Protein is the big one, and leucine plays a big role, very much neglected. I think to a larger extent people are not eating enough protein, not getting enough leucine, because a lot of these tissues remodeling and building requires leucine. Muscle protein synthesis isn't the only thing that leucine is used. Bone building, follicles and all sorts of things, tissue of all sorts and all varieties plays a role. So get that in. But sulfur is also an important binder of keratin. So those which is basically in your hairs and nails, is a lot of keratin. So that sort of collagen basically needs to be bound with sulfur, and sulfur is a big thing that gets depleted in most modern diets, and which is a reality. If you're in your middle age, you're usually sort of declining. People talk about DHEA, and they talk about testosterone and all this sort of stuff. It's nonsense. If that was the case, if testosterone was the issue, it's a myth. Basically, all young people would be bald as, and when you got older, you'd have a big, lush hair. It's the opposite, So it's just absolute excrement. It's all associational garbage from eunuchs, yeah, exactly, who had deranged endocrine systems because of being turned into eunuchs. So it's just that's what they based their whole idea about testosterone and hair loss. It's nonsense. You don't see it amongst tribal people. It's only when tribal people move into the cities, they start having hair loss problems. Those who live in tribal areas eating plenty of meat and getting good animal nutrition don't seem to have the problem. So eat like our ancestors and you'll be much better. But as I said, you can do a few biohacks because you have lived non-ancestrally. When you live non-ancestrally, which means that you've actually accumulated a number of anti-nutrients, particular oxalate, that really ravages the body in terms of sulfur. And that also affects with cardiovascular issues in an indirect way, because it can actually cause these sort of inflammatory, or because oxalate can go through the bloodstream, go through the heart, goes through all the organs, and it can have damaging to the tissue, irritation and inflammation it can cause. So it can have like a secondary effect to existing damage as well. Plus, as it's going through all this tissue, what is it doing? It's depleting all the sulfur in your body. Less sulfur means less nitric oxide, less vasodilation, higher blood pressure. All these are related. We are doing a lot of things wrong. So, yeah, pretty much get the sulfur up, get the animal foods up, and you will start seeing improvements. Zinc, really important. So, and the thing that many people, the two nutrients that help the thyroid that many people neglect is selenium and iodine. So I have covered both selenium in terms of selenite, with the fish one. It's a very old, it's about more than a year old now, that video, and there's another one that I've also covered on. So just do on the fish. So, mercury, it's about mercury, and that'll give you information about the sort of fish that have got very high levels of selenium. And you can also research other animal products, organ meats and eggs have got, and so do a lot of these seafood type things you can incorporate. You'll get the information there, and also the ratios, so you know how much mercury to the ratio, and so how much that there's enough. A good ratio, a low ratio will mean there's enough selenium to remove the mercury, but also shitloads left over to do a whole lot of other things to support the thyroid function, many other antioxidant sort of functions throughout the body. So really good to have selenium and iodine to balance as a cofactor in a number of the enzymatic pathways in your thyroid. You'll actually see all these enzymes, and they are all, there's vitamin D dependency, there's zinc dependency, but the key ones is iodine and selenium. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, well, trouble. There goes the neighborhood in 3 days' time. I've only had one testing where they literally did my tongue and my mouth, and then they did my nostrils. They didn't go deep. They say they don't do that anymore. And it still brought tears to my eyes. So I couldn't imagine if they were sticking it all the way, going like that. I mean, damn, I'd be passed out. Yes, absolutely. Oops, that jumped. Good jump. I should move to the desert. Yes, start a camel farm. Sounds like a good idea, actually. Also, camel milk is the lowest in deuterium milk of all the milks. I think that's one reason why camel milk, all these sort of things that people talk about camel milk having all these benefits and all that. When I look at it, I go, okay, let's take a look at camel milk, goat milk, all this. What are the peptides? Very similar. What are the lactoferrin? Yeah, they vary a bit here or there, but yep, still all of them have lactoferrin. They have a lot of similar substances. The only part that's different is the water content of the milk. Camel's milk has lower deuterium. So maybe that's where the benefit is coming from. It's actually improving mitochondrial respiration. Maybe that's what it's really doing. And we've missed the most important element, basically the deuterium angle. Really, what is energy production? Energy production is basically the utilization by the body of protons and electrons. That is what it is. And it really has to do is what foods are going to furnish the best protons and electrons. Well, electrons not really is an issue. It doesn't matter which type of electrons. It's the protons that are non-deuterium, that don't have the deuterium. That's really what type of hydrogen isotope really is in that food. It's really what fundamentally the body's not the body's not oxidizing. This is the confusion. It's not oxidizing. It's not producing energy directly from glucose or directly, so to speak, all this massive energy, ATP, from lipolysis. It's taking it's taking pyruvate, it's taking the end products of lipolysis and actually pushing them through the Krebs cycle and producing water. And that water is going into the matrix and be pushed through the electron chain and actually being turned into massive amounts of ATP. That's where most of the ATP comes from, most of the energy. It's really basically what is the quality, what quality of proton, electron type material is the food providing the body? So what level of hydration, in a sense, is the food providing? That's what really tells you where, and you can see it, most animals that consume a lot of sugary stuff and all that, high deuterium foods, they have shorter lives. There's not one long-lived life. All the animals that live long lives are basically in a more ketotic, they actually oxidize more fat. When you look at animals that live longer than other animals, it's stark. And it really is deuterium. It's really basically maintaining good mitochondrial health for longer than the other animals and surviving and maintaining better cell integrity for longer. That's really what it comes down to. And yes, I completely agree with you on that. That is basically it. When I looked at those Russian people in the Siberia and the environment that was, their water supply was 132 parts per million, which is really lower than spring water or anything like that, which is in the 140. This is basically, similar to fat, which is the, close to the olive oil 130, which is the cutoff area. So if you're using water, you're depleting, your body depletes naturally a certain amount every day. If all your water supply that's going to your animals, that's going to your crops, that's going to everything is low deuterium, and those animals and everything around that you consume are basically low deuterium, no wonder every one of them are centenarians and above. And some people speculate they're very old, but they don't know exactly how because they didn't keep very good records in the early days. But some of their children are in, over 100 or close to, and they're still alive. So Buckley's chance how old they are, I don't know. Are they 130 or what? So we're talking about very old people. And the only thing that I can point to is the deuterium content. And this is what the Russians actually realized when they were looking at this population. I can't remember the academic that actually came up with that. And the only reason the Hungarians are aware of this research and got onto it, that's the only people in the Eastern Europe that actually became aware of this information were the Hungarians, because some of them, as I said, worked in some of the research labs in Russia and became acquainted with this information. Because in the old days, there was no internet or anything like that. You really literally had to work or have some contact with people that were involved in this stuff. That was the only way of finding out about it. That's why it's taken so long for this information to come out. And it's only a recent stuff, and most people just don't understand it. It's just goes over their head. I think it's always the way it's explained as well. When you basically explain it down to basic things, here's the electron chain, what sort of water are you pushing through it? It's that Bloody simple. Is that water contaminated with too many neutrons or not? It's not complicated rocket science. And what foods are going to add more neutrons? Well, we know carbs, certain other things. Don't do them. You're going to have better water production through the Krebs cycle, and that better water production is going to give you, a safer way of producing that excess energy. So that's the secret, I think, to longevity and long life is really reducing the deuterium content of your diet or things that come into you and stuff like that. So, and there are other things like pathogens and stuff like that that tend to actually increase deuterium as well, like mold and things like that. So there's a lot of environmental things. Staying indoors for too long and not getting exposed to the sun, which is important, can also have an effect. If you're out early in the hours of the day or more out in the sun and stuff like that, you are going to get more like complex cytochrome C, basically your complex 4 can get a lot of photonic energy of the near infrared, and it can actually increase the working of that complex. So it can make it more efficient. It can increase its energy, its flow of electrons to basically improve energy production by about 30-odd%. Well, that's what they say. It's definitely above baseline. Whether it's exactly 30%, that's what some research has done. I'm not saying I'm not convinced. I know Jack believes it is. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to go into it now because I don't want to get into an argument type thing of, what other people believe and all that. But even if it's slightly less than that, it's a hell of a lot better than just basically baseline, so to speak. So... And a lot of things can impede that, like the blue spectrum can actually impede some of that, interfere with some of those, that photonic energy. So can have an effect. So it's important that early synchronization, blue light, this sort of stuff, that sort of stuff that actually reduces all these sort of things. It's really basically improving our environment and all that. I've actually even got Dad now. Dad's actually given me some dosh and said, "Can you order me some blue light, new globes?" So I'm going to replace his globes completely. So basically, he will have a different environment. He'll eliminate all the. He used to have incandescent lights, and in the last couple of years, he's basically replaced them with, all the new stuff because you can't buy any incandescent lights. And I told him about it, and he goes, "Okay." I said, "Look, Dad, it'll improve your sleep. I sleep much better than I used to, and so you'll see benefits out of it." So he's basically jumped on the bandwagon as well, which is good. So he wants to do a bit of biohacking. He may be in his, late 80s, but it's never too late, So, and I'd like to see him be around a bit longer. I do love my father quite a lot. And he made me the man that I was by, being a bit tough love, but I think he helped a lot, making me a much stronger man than I would have been otherwise. So I do have to thank him for being tough with me. And very, very desert cows. Yes, sounds good. And he had all the animals on his boat. That is true. Maybe he was deuterium depleting all the way. Yeah, look, yes, it is. I haven't tried it, but I've heard about it and all that. I've tried other things, but I've never been able to get camel's milk. I can't remember who. Somebody actually said about that they were able to get camel's milk in South Australia. They were able to, and there was actually a farm somewhere in Australia where you could get raw camel's milk, but there was the government. They went all woke about it and started giving these farmers a very hard time. So, yeah, I think camel's milk is one of the best milks you can get out there. I think it's the top, right at the top of all the milks. But it's hard to get it. I mean, Australia's got shitloads of feral camels out there. I mean, I'm not joking. Some of our feral camels are being transported back to the Middle East to provide genetics for their camels, because they've lost some of the genetic diversity in their camel populations. And because most of our camels came from the Middle East and they were used in wartime, and then after this First World War, they were released in the desert of Australia and they've just gone, they've just bred out of proportion like the kangaroos. But in this case, I'll Gatling gun the kangas, but I definitely won't touch the camels. I think they could be a great resource for milk for Australia. It's just, just somebody would tap into it and use the technology that made by cow technology to basically allow it to be available to the community. I think a lot of people get a lot of benefits from such a source. But yes, we still have some sun left. It's good. I've been in the garden a lot. I was already taking vitamin D, magnesium, B vitamins as part of the autoimmune protocol. Sounds damn good. And yes, keep it up. Make sure you get a bit of iodine in there and selenium as well. They're very important as well. They sort of help. I find, and primarily from eggs, a bit of liver, stuff like that. Some of the crustaceans. I think we need to add a few additional things. I don't think a lot of people add enough animal foods. We too restricted on just bloody muscle meats. It's just like steak. I'm a carnivore. I have a steak. I mean, bloody hell. Get a bit of variety in your diet. Mix it up. Exactly. It's biblical lifestyle. Yes. And remember, the fruit, the worst carbohydrate. The apple, the worst carbohydrate is the fruit. That's the highest in deuterium out of all the carbohydrates. Remember, the devil offered the fruit. Let that be a lesson to you, to the vagoons out there. Oops. No, thank you, StreamYard, for literally flying. I just lost a whole lot of questions. Sorry, guys. I have to thank StreamYard for that. It just bumped. Or me being too slow. Probably both. She'll kill you before she actually hands over any meat. The people she deals with. Not necessarily. If you do it with bone broth and mix it in. Usually when I stop a fast, I have eggs. Why would it be a problem? Unless you've got an egg allergy type thing. No. It's got cholesterol in it. It's got sulfur in it. It's got all the sort of nutrients that the body needs to build tissue. So I disagree completely. Unless you've got an underlying issue, sensitivity to eggs, egg proteins, which only a very small amount of the population do. And even on that one, nope, I don't have a problem. If it's raw dairy has been shown to basically really help a lot of people. So not a problem. It's only the commercial stuff and all that. And usually if people have like severe leaky gut and all that, I don't usually immediately recommend dairy. I usually get them onto some lactoferrin and stuff like that, trying to help the immune system in there, vitamin D and stuff like that. And eventually I do like to get them on raw dairy at some stage, but not initially. So that's just because they just can't handle it. You know, they've still got too much derangement, but it's not because it's bad. It's just because they just can't handle it. They just can handle certain types of simple amino acids and stuff like that. But it's not the problem. IBS is basically a derangement, gut microbiome derangements of collagen. You need fat-soluble vitamins. You need those sort of things. So, you know, it's usually if people are being triggered by some of the proteins, and that is because they've got the underlying derangements, not because of the food. Not a problem. No, they can't. They got no idea. They don't realize. I mean, after having done these tests, I had weeks where I was having diarrhea and constipation, all these sort of issues, and then they actually did all this and said, "You've got nothing." And what was the doctor's reply after doing the endoscopy, the tests? He said, "You've probably got, Mr. Serpanos, you've probably got a psychological problem. Could it be psychological? Because we can't find anything." And then I had more oxalate dumps, and some in my urine. I started having like frothy stuff and this like needle type pain, and I realized, okay, now I know what it is, because I already had heard about oxalates, and then I started researching and I started understanding what was happening. And then when I threw in the actual citric acid, magically this stuff started going away. And then I wasn't turning up to my doctor. I hadn't seen him for ages after that. The only reason I went recently back is to do the scan to see what's happening with my lung. So yes, where before I was turning up quite a few days of the week, or every week at least once, to try and get medical certificate, because I was having severe IBS issues. So yes, so you don't know what it is. It can be a lot of different factors. In my case, it was oxalates. And once I got in control of them, it all sorted itself out. A lot of people that have been past plant-based have a lot of these issues, unfortunately, and usually end up with a lot of oxalate-related issues in their kidneys, in their bladder, in their feces, in their, it can even be a problem in your stomach, oxalates. So they can be a problem. And now I have, even though I did that stuff on the oxalates in with taurine in your stomach sort of thing, taurine is a sulfur amino acid. It may also, in good amounts, it may also play a role with reducing or binding some of these oxalates as well. So it may have a role there where people start seeing some better results by eating more meats, which are high in taurine. So the sort of mechanisms in that regard, but it's still using a lot of that sulfur, which could be used more productively in other tissue types, vasodilation and many other things, breaking down beta amyloid in the brain, so you don't become Alzheimer's. So choline, which is in animal foods, and taurine play a very important role in sorting out problems of beta amyloid plaque. Well, the advanced glycation end products of the stickiness and the misfolding of proteins can be eliminated by the taurine, And choline can also, and acetylcholine can also help with reducing the amount of plaquing as well. So they're both working on a number of different pathways to reduce that sort of stuff. So another advantage of using these animal products, which are high in choline and taurine. Choline, on the other hand, can also be, there are people that have got my genetics that can actually have issues with choline biosynthesis, but it's a small percentage. With methylation as well, many people have difficulty getting enough vitamin, like folate and stuff like that. Now you don't want too much folate, because folate can deplete B12, and that's not a good thing for your homocysteine in that pathway. But methionine comes to the rescue, and when you provide enough meat, which has got riboflavin, which improves that pathway, plus when you put choline in there, that helps because it takes pressure off the other pathway, the methylation pathway. It will also methylate away estrogen, because estrogen dominance can also cause issues. Choline can reduce and methylate away excess estrogen. Boron, my protocol of 12 milligrams for 1 week, then 9, then 6, then 3, and then stick to 3 for the next 3 months to normalize some of the hormones that are out of whack while you're doing some of the other stuff. So all these sort of things help in getting some of the derangements sorted out, in a sense. But yes. And what Dom's saying about vitamin D is very important for the gut. All the tight junctions from your nose right through to your anus, all the mucosal layers and all the tight junctions. Vitamin D regulates the collagen degrading enzymes. When you've got a lot of inflammation, your liver produces more matrix metalloproteinase and can derange collagen, creating issues in the gut, creating these IBS issues and all that. So vitamin D can tighten up those tight junctions and also downregulate MMPs expression in those tissue types. So we need to control MMPs within a sort of a physiological level of collagen turnover. When it becomes excessive, it's a problem. And thank you, Dom, for reminding me about the MMP related issues when it comes to collagen. I sometimes forget to mention it, and it's very bloody important. So thank you. I don't believe what they said, Mike. I just keep on doing what Uncle Harry said. Thanks. She's getting better. It's easier for people to believe a lie than to realize their belief is based on a lie. Very much so. It's cognitive dissonance, unfortunately, and it's very strong out there. Yes. I was joking about them being jealous. Anyway, we'll move on. Oops. Oh, come on, Harry, find your spot. It was overshot. Yes, didn't we all? G'day, Sonia. How are things? I've been trying to reduce water intake to reduce deuterium, but getting headaches. What am I doing wrong? You may not be fat adapted sufficiently. That's the problem. That's why you're getting headaches. You're not actually, you need to be, if you've got high insulin for whatever reason. It could be anything. It could be basically mold toxicity can actually raise insulin and the glucose in your bloodstream. So it can be a pathogenic type thing. It can be an underlying insulin resistance that hasn't been resolved. It can be a number of issues, and what can happen is you end up not being able to access fat, stored fat for hydration, and then you start getting these issues. So you may have to eat a bit extra fat. That can be a problem if you've still got high insulin. If you eat excess amounts, you'll start storing it, and you can't access it, which is a problem. And yep, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying to lose fat, 30 kilos down already. So how much fat should I be eating? So you're losing weight, which is a good thing. So are you getting enough? It could be, the other thing is you may not be getting enough salt. I should have read the rest of it to understand. So you may not be getting enough salt, and there's a problem that can cause some of these issues as well, because you do need salt. Some of us don't get enough. But you have to read your body and work out how much and all that. So your body will tell you how you feel. Send me an email. Give me a bit of a background on your situation, what you're eating, how you're eating, a bit of a rundown on your past diet and stuff like that, and some past issues. And then it gives me a bit of a heads up what could be driving some of this sort of stuff. So my email is in the About. So if you go into my channel, the About, you can find my email there. Nathan Smith. Along with brainwashing is the idea of no pain, no gain. So basically it's a waste of bad. As much be good for you. So wrong. Yeah, look, there's a lot of sort of, look, there's money to be had in the sort of come to the gym, as if people worked in a gym all day in the past, or tribal people or whatever. They just went out hunting, came back. They weren't basically pounding the pavements or stuff like that. And when people were eating kibble in the past, some kibble, they weren't eating a lot, because it was seasonal primarily. No refrigeration. Most of the stuff was salted. So our foods were like so salted because we didn't have refrigeration. We were consuming something like 10 times the salt we consume today. And people were consuming also less water because they were eating more animal foods, so they were hydrating with animal foods without knowing it. If you look at grandparents and people like that, you don't see them constantly drinking water. It's not surprising. And some of them still have these so-called nasty habits of eating animal foods, or too many of them, So, yes, and that regard. And they think it's a cheat. They think they're cheating. I mean, they're eating appropriately, but they think it's a cheat. It's funny as. But that's the sort of funny world we live in nowadays. Yes. I go on the archaeological evidence, the N15 data. I look at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years of collagen, bone, because bone matrix is collagen, okay? Your bones. It's basically what bones are is rigid or basically mineralized mineralized protein. That's what bones are, mineralized protein. So that's what gives them rigidity and strength. When we're young little children, when we're born, we don't have a lot of mineralization in our bones, and that's why they're very flexible. They can be flexed and turned and whatever, and kids can crawl up a wall much easier than adults for that reason, until they need to carry more weight as they grow bigger, and they mineralize their bones to be able to carry that weight. But fundamentally, bone matrix is the thing that is important. If you've got good integrity of bone matrix by consuming good levels of protein and stuff like that, and getting the fat-soluble vitamins that regulate the collagen-degrading enzymes, so they are regulated appropriately and not misbehave, these proteins, so they build tissue and not tear down tissue inappropriately or under oxidative stress, so they are properly regulated. You need the proper nutrition. This is why we're having all these problems today, because we are constantly inflaming ourselves with all sorts of things in our environment and all that, and creating these high levels of MMPs, well, the liver is, and creating a lot of these derangements in collagen throughout our body. The body is made up primarily largely of collagen, our musculoskeletal structures. To maintain that in good integrity, we need to eat species appropriate foods and good levels of protein and fat soluble vitamins, and some minerals and B vitamins as cofactors for some of the enzymatic pathways. But the importance of fat soluble vitamins needs to be emphasized here, because they regulate these enzymatic pathways. So these enzymes that do a number of catalyzing functions, they are regulated directly by retinol, vitamin D, and menaquinone 4. Menaquinone 4 directly, which is a K2 at the animal form, directly also interacts with the DNA and can actually force the DNA to transcript certain things and can alter certain things in the DNA. So epigenetically, that is. So menaquinone 4 is bloody important, and it's only found in animal foods as the K2, because the K2 goes beyond just activating osteocalcin, these proteins, or GLA matrix. It goes beyond all that. It goes into all these other regulations of calcium in soft tissue and elsewhere, plays a lot of other functions like in bile synthesis and the regulation of that part. So it's got a whole lot of different roles. That's why I say sometimes people are not getting enough. How much is enough? We don't know. There is no RDA. We have no idea, but there doesn't seem to be a toxic level. So you can give massive amounts and you will see results. The body will take it up. The enzymes will take it up and use it. Move calcium out of soft tissue really rapidly. That's what the Japanese and the Dutch research showed, and improve bone integrity. Obviously, they work synergistically with the vitamin D and retinol, but it plays you could say, a coordinating role. It seems to be a coordinating role is one way of characterizing it. So it's really damn important. And to a large extent, this is sort of covering some of the previous questions, or this thing is, the brainwashing, as Nathan has said, is we've stuck to these very narrow perspectives or understandings of our physiology in a very reductionist way, where we only see these enzymatic pathways but don't see the complex interaction of all these pathways. And that's why we miss so much. And it's only by, when you are a bit of an investigative mind and you go away and you look at this pathway, that pathway, and you see these another study saying, oh, this interacts with that, and you go, hold on, that's doing this, that's doing that, and that enzyme there is actually interacting with that. Okay, what the hell's happening here in between? So you've just found a pathway where everybody's missed. That's the sort of stuff I look for to understand how these things are interplaying. Anyway, move on. I wish I had enough time to do a lot of more videos on this sort of stuff. Too many folders, not enough time to do it all. Anyway, I do retire in about 5 years' time, approximately. I may have more time then. Until then, it'll be a dribble until I've got more time. So, yeah. Okay. Yep. Look, sodium is really important in actual ATP synthase. So in the inner mitochondrial membrane. So people don't realize that there's actually salt in there, very important, and there's an exchange. And actually a very important element that regulates the osmotic and the balancing, the electrolytes to be balanced, is taurine. This is why a lot of people on ketogenic diets, low protein ketogenic diets, get into trouble with electrolytes. They don't have enough taurine. That's why. Then you're going to say, some people then will pose a question, well, Harry, okay, people on a low carbohydrate or paleo diet may not be eating too many plants, not eating enough meat, not getting enough taurine, and they've got electrolyte disturbances. And then apparently on a carnivore diet, when you eat more meat you and more with salt, you resolve this. And then they'll say, well, why isn't this happening in people with us on a SAD diet? They don't seem to have these problems. High insulin, it's retaining a lot of these minerals and they're recycling them because of the high insulin retention of sodium, which holds in all the others. That's why, and that will actually can, because of, have an effect. That's what's happening. It's the insulin. That's the difference. And Walter Kempner understood that back in the 1930s. And that's why he said, when you're on a high sugar diet, 94% sugar, 4% protein, 2% fat, he said, no electrolytes, zero, because the high insulin is retaining all this stuff. You don't need any. That's why the kibble eaters out there, the high carb kibble eaters, don't have this problem. But they do have high blood pressure and all that. That's why this high retention is the problem for them. They get waterlogged, all this water that gets into their soft tissue, and they you can see them. You press on their skin, and their skin doesn't sort of bounce back in any way. It sort of creates a dimple, or that water retention, water logging. You see it in their legs. It's horrific. But very hard to lose a lot of that sort of stuff. That's why you don't need it. But when you're on an ancestral diet, you will excrete a certain amount. That's why you need to keep the sodium higher, or you need to keep the protein higher. By keeping the protein high, you're getting more taurine. The taurine is regulating those electrolytes. That's the secret sauce in the carnivore diet. Taurine, the regulation of electrolytes. Anyway, let's move on. What about soda water? Oh, it's enjoyable. Is it species appropriate? More than likely not. Do I enjoy some soda water now and then? I have. And yes, it's like tonic water. I like tonic water, but is it exactly what our ancestors did? Nope. Yes, exactly. Yes, the 7-day Adventists are the ones that dominate. If you take a look, go way back, the nutritional field has been dominated by the 7-day Adventists from their inception in the way back, from the late 19th century. They were dominating the field. They actually created the first nutritional associations because they wanted to push their kibble eating culture, because we couldn't have men eating basically, animal products and having high testosterone and being randy and wanting to have more sex. Now, we couldn't have that. We had to basically give them a kibble diet that would suppress their testosterone and suppress their sexual desires and appetites. Yes, exactly. And that's where all that sort of stuff came from. And these people were zealots, and they were on a mission. They created the associations. They funded them heavily through selling their products with, in Australia, it's Sanitarium, run by the 7-day Adventists, and they promote all this nonsense and fund all these studies, associational claptrap studies, to promote their BS ideology, which is a religious-based, masquerading as epidemiological science, which it's epidemiological science research is problematic in itself. When you add a religious flavor behind it, it basically, you just create excrement at that stage. And that's exactly what the Seventh-day Adventists funded scientists through these different organizations. And they've actually set up a number of different trusts around the world, which are also allow other food industry companies to come in and put money into those things to promote the same bullshit, because there's profits in grains. There's not big profit margins in a lot of the animal foods, and there's higher labor costs in the animal foods, wherein the grain stuff shit is basically less labor costs, more potential for much easier to automate things. So it's all that sort of stuff. Richard, thank you very much, mate. New computer fund. It's going to take more than $20, mate, but thanks. Yes. Yes, all this sort of stuff. I've lost my spot now. I don't know where I am. Yep. But generally speaking, that's a lot of the crux of the propaganda coming from that sort of environment. Yes. To lose weight and preserving muscle mass, which is better, PSF or water fasting? If you're in a catabolic state for too long, you will start breaking down tissue. The guy that actually did a long-term fast, 386 days, I believe, the longest fast ever, but that person was actually getting electrolytes, so they were giving they had specific electrolyte powders that he was supposed to have a certain amount of quantity. So they knew the excretion rates of magnesium, potassium, sodium, all these things, what the excretion rate is. So they gave him all the actual amounts specifically for the excretion rates. But now they didn't give him many fat soluble vitamins. Why? Because in the fat cells is where fat soluble vitamins get stored. So you'll be dumping quite a lot of fat soluble vitamins. I usually say to people, when you're fasting, like long-term fasts, don't take vitamin D, don't take retinol, don't take any of these sort of things. Why? Because you're going to be releasing it from your fat cells, the fat soluble vitamins. One. But water soluble vitamins, different. Except pantothenic acid, yeah, that can store for some time, but that's a different story. I have done a video on Bart K's channel on that one, a very old study, but it does prove about the pantothenic acid thing. But moving beyond that point, that's the other thing that they provided. Why? Because if you don't add the B vitamins, you don't supplement them when you're doing long fasts, what will happen is a number of enzymatic pathways won't work. Like, you need certain B vitamins for lipolysis. You need certain vitamins for glycolysis. You need certain vitamins for a number of other enzymatic pathways. So if you run out of, you actually store them for a couple of days. If you do it for too long, and you do recycle some in that regard when you're doing a dry fast, but at the end of the day, you will start depleting. The longer you go, the lower the B vitamins, the lower certain enzymes can work. And at some point, that could be very detrimental to your health. So it really depends on a lot of factors. Obviously, if you're getting all the sort of stuff, you could probably do it longer. You could also basically intermittently spike with a leucine supplement. Like if you're doing a long fast, you can spike with a leucine supplement. So all the sort of proteins that are amino acids that are getting broken down and released into the bloodstream, they can be pushed back into muscle protein synthesis. And if you go and check my one of the videos that I did recently on muscle protein synthesis about leucine, so Harry Serpanos leucine, if you do, it'll actually show even in a fasted state, it's not You don't need carbs for muscle protein synthesis. It's leucine, always has been. So you can actually biohack a sort of stuff to preserve muscle mass. So it's like going, okay, I'm going to fast for a couple of days or a week or whatever. I'm going to give myself some trace minerals, supplements, plus the B vitamins. I'm not going to give a shit about the fat-soluble vitamins. And I'm going to throw in some of the actual, some leucine in intermittently to sort of spike muscle protein synthesis. And so as I'm going through this and I'm losing that sort of weight, but you want to do it on a 24-hour base so you can still get a 24-hour type of autophagy. Depends what you want to do. The body will, up until about 3 odd days, you'll still preserve quite good. And then after that, it starts losing a bit. It's just the way it is. If you provide all the cofactors, like they did in that study back in Scotland, the guy that they did, 386 days. As long as you're providing all the others, so the enzymes have got, because all this material is coming off your own body, so it's going into the bloodstream. So there's plenty of aminos and stuff like that. Key thing is you need the B vitamins. That's the critical part, and some of the trace minerals in order to be cofactors for a lot of the enzymes that are going to be produced from those proteins, those amino acids, that are being released, will be transcribed into new proteins that can do a number of catalyzing sort of functions throughout the body. That's the secret sort of combination. And as long as you're getting enough energy, because you've got low insulin and you've got the energy on board because you're losing it, you've got that energy there. Yeah, you will preserve muscle mass. You'll get this peripheral insulin resistance, where the body's preventing, and keeping glucose really tightly low, just from what it produces from glycerol, and having this, blocking out completely at the cell wall any glucose from going in. So no glucose will go in. And at that point, only free fatty acids will go in to produce energy. Fantastic. Just think of all the deuterium depleted water you'll be producing. Great as an energy to provide a good energy source for that extra ATP synthase. So, look, I usually don't, so I stick to basically to water fast or dry fast, and dry fast no more than 3 days or maybe 4. Personally, I think that can be done longer, like they did in Russia for 14 days, and the world record is 18 days. I have some issues with that. I'm still looking into it. I still haven't definitively made up my mind about it in some regards. But generally speaking, I would say water fast with trace minerals. You only probably need sodium for the first couple of days. Then you probably need to get some trace minerals in there and B vitamins. Make sure the B vitamins you get are ones that basically don't have any sugar or any other crap or whatever in there. It's just pure B vitamins. Make sure it's a good quality one. It doesn't have any cyanocobalamin or or folic acid. It's basically folate, methylcobalamin. So it's a good quality one. And yeah, you could probably do it a bit longer in that way. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve and all that. And you can also, as long as you maintain good resistance at the cell wall in terms of glucose, not allowing glucose in. So you've got this peripheral resistance in terms of glucose, not of fats, but glucose. Then you can preserve muscle. So, but you have to be very well fat adapted. So I wouldn't do those sort of long sort of things unless you've done keto for some time. You've become very fat adapted. Your body is very attuned to these things. And then, yes, you can preserve. And if you want to do long ones, you will lose some skeletal muscle. It's just, even though you're releasing some proteins, you will dump some of those proteins out. You'll get rid of them. You won't be able to utilize them very well. And the reason for that is because of lack of leucine. And so what I usually say is to people, if you're doing like, let's say somebody wants to do I've heard people do, I've never done it. I've only done longest fast I've done is water fast is 6 days. Let's say somebody wants to do a long time, like 1 month. I think Necro Kitty did 1 month once or twice. I can't remember now. I would every week, I would basically, every 3 days, after every 3 days on the 4th day, I would be basically putting in a supplement of leucine in there to protect my muscle mass. So I'd be spiking it up with leucine to basically get a lot of those, to rebuild a lot of tissue from those released amino acids. That's what I would personally do. And after the 3 days, I would be making sure that I was getting some of the B vitamins and trace minerals from a colloidal mineral in the water with salt. So that's what I would be doing if I was doing a water fast in that regard. And I wouldn't do it excessive, like a lot of people do when they're doing water fast. They have excessive amounts of water. I would not use a lot because I want to hydrate more with my own fat. You don't need to heavily hydrate. And even that guy who did it didn't actually hydrate heavily. So, you're producing shitloads of water from your own fat. So, it's really just to get the electrolytes in, some of the sodium in, and also some of the B vitamins, which are cofactors for a lot of enzymes. Otherwise, those enzymes can't work. If they can't work, that creates problems in your body. I think that's where some of the issues with long-term fast can come from, lack of cofactors. And that's why I don't generally recommend it. And I usually say, if you're going to do something like that, find somebody like Bart Kay or Mary Ruddock or whatever, because I've got a day job. I don't have time to coach people and keep an eye on them. And at least these people can tell you where to go, what tests to do to check that basically everything's working properly. And they know the tests. I have no idea what sort of tests. I mean, I'd have to go to my GP to find out what tests. It's not something I've looked into it because I don't do those sort of consultancies. So I don't need to research what lab tests to do, so to speak. So, I'm more into researching the science of how to biohack things, but not really on lab tests. If I need to do a specific lab test, I go to my doctor. He knows what to do or where to send me or where to send the sample to. So I don't get too heavily involved in that sort of stuff. Personally, in that regard, because it's about 3 hours now and I'm getting close to finish. There was something else that I think I missed. Yeah, hold on, just something I did want to check. Yes, but yeah. So, oh yeah, now I remember. There was one other thing that I was going to say. And no, anyway, I was looking for another. There is. Anyway, I'll look at it later. So, something to do with deuterium, I did want to mention, but I'll leave that for my video. I'm not going to mention it right now. But there's another thing that I did forget to mention. In terms of fasting and protein, you're never in true. I've said this multiple times. There is a notion out there that a lot of people believe that's wrong, that you're in this, when you're fasting, you're in a constant autophagy. You're not. It's a myth. What happens is your body goes through this pulsatile effect. So as you do, your body does autophagy, it clears out a lot of junk out of the cell. It breaks it down to amino acids and fatty acids or whatever, and releases it into the bloodstream. The moment it hits the bloodstream, insulin, IGF-1, mTOR, all these anabolic pathways go up. At that point, autophagy stops. Then all that material gets pushed in to be reused. And when that stops, then you go back into autophagy. So you go through this pulsatile effect in terms of autophagy, rebuild, autophagy, rebuild. It's low-grade rebuild, but that's what it happens. So no fast is complete and all that. Now, what's the other thing is, can you put, what do you mean by PSMF? I'm not really sure what that means. I don't know anyway. I've heard it before. Can anybody tell me what it means? What's the acronym for that? Or can you tell me what the acronym for it is? Because I don't know. I've heard it before, but I can't remember. While you actually put the acronym there, Jin, I will basically okay. Protein sparing modified fasting. Okay. For me, fasting is fasting. Either you do a water fast or a dry fast. You're not putting any protein in there. Whatever's coming out of your own tissue that's being, that's the only amino acids. The only reason why I recommend leucine, if you're doing long, like people doing very long fasts, is to basically to protect people's. I don't want people to basically. I think how much protein do these people recommend? I can't remember. There's a certain amount that they recommend. Can you just put it on, because I just can't remember how much they recommend. I think it's too high, and I think the only thing you need is, if you're doing a long fast, is leucine supplementation. So you push. If you go and do check my video, Harry Serpanos, leucine, 1 gram per kilo body weight, far too much. That's going to push way high the actual the levels, which is going to affect autophagy. So 2.5 grams Barbados thinks, okay, it's just too high. All we need is leucine. And if you look at that study, if you haven't seen that study, the study that I actually talk about in the leucine video, talking about, because a lot of people talk about you need carbohydrates to build muscle. No, you need leucine. So in order not to over exaggerate IGF-1, mTOR, and insulin, these anabolic pathways, we don't want to over exaggerate them, because that will basically push us out of autophagy for a very long period of time, and it takes a long time to basically get back in. It's not a very healthy way. I think it's an absolute stupid way. I think all you need is, in order to not undermine this fasting autophagy system, is to basically just occasionally every 3 days to spike it with basically 3 grams of leucine, and you're not going to build muscle. Now, these guys were building muscle because they were fasted, and they were being given every single day. They were given leucine every single day. So by not giving it every 3rd day, you preserve muscle mass, but you maintain longer autophagy, sort of thing, if it makes sense. So no, I don't believe that. So yeah, leucine. Yeah, so pure leucine supplement, no other, not a branched chain amino acid, not a BCAA, no, pure leucine, nothing else. It's like a powder type thing. I actually got one from Planet Max in Hobart. Anyway, so, and it's Body Ripped is the company that produces it, and it's a pharmaceutical grade leucine, pure leucine, nothing else in it. I suspect there are other brands that are pure leucine as well, pharmaceutical grade. This is an American company. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, you do not want to add more amino acids. You just want the turnover of your own body's amino acids in terms of autophagy, and you just want to periodically spike. Now, these people are deliberately trying to prove that it's leucine and nothing else that actually is involved in muscle protein synthesis. Even when you're in a fasted state with low insulin, you can still build muscle by giving every day. Now, we're not into, when you're fasting, you want to basically get more autophagy. So we're not really into the building muscle thing. We just want to basically get fasted, but also preserve muscle mass by every 3 days. Hitting it, especially if people are doing long wet fasts, like, water fasts for a long period of time, they need to basically every 3 days to try and get some leucine in there to maintain their muscle mass, to preserve muscle mass better. It's a hack, basically, in a sense. So that's the thing. You're welcome. Yep. So that's pretty much that point. Glutamine, no, you don't need it. Look, most meats, most animal foods, the body can actually synthesize and mix and match and take the essential fat amino acids and reconstruct them in all sorts of things. So yeah, I don't take any supplements other than as the ones that I said before, choline, and even choline I haven't bought choline. I've sort of stuck to eating liver and eggs and saying, nah, I'm not going to bother buying choline anymore. So pretty much my sulfur amino acids and even my MSM, I gave most of that to Dad because he needs it more than I do. And I just stuck to my taurine and my L-citrulline for vasodilation. So I've limited it, and I try and get most of the nutrients from food. That's the best way to do it, ultimately. So, yes. Yeah. I'm an old boy with all these acronyms. Sometimes I need to be told exactly what it is. I think leucine is the most important thing in that regard, so. But yes. Anyway, because I've actually seen studies with other amino acids where they've actually taken away the leucine, and they're not very effective. Let's put it that way. Leucine is the champion when it comes to muscle protein synthesis. So now let me just go through. Where have you been? You're late. Dusters for you. Llama. Oh, you got the llama back. Oh, I love it. Good to see you. You're welcome, mate. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, look, when it comes to salt, I just listen to my body. Sometimes I will consume more, sometimes less. It varies, actually. I really listen to my body when it comes to salt. If basically I've salted something and I'm going, this doesn't really, I feel like more, I'll put more. if I don't feel as much, I go, yeah, I'll scrape a bit off. So I'm not like welded, ideologically. I listen to my body. My body sort of will fluctuate in terms of its sodium and requirements. So I don't get too ideological about it. Yeah, exactly. It was just 10 times what we consume today. I mean, even Hello Kitty used to tell me when she was a young kid, her mother used to give her, these fish that were very heavily salted. I got that as well. We all got that as well. None of us had problems. A lot of these studies, if you go back and look at the early studies, how they were done, they were really just epidemiological garbage. They looked at all these countries, and then they found no consistency in terms of blood pressure. You had countries like Japan and Korea that had massive, off the show consumption, because they consume massive amounts of salt in some of these countries, and other countries having lower and having higher blood pressure, others having, and they found two tribal populations that apparently, and I don't know how and this was actually questionnaire stuff, and observation. It wasn't even clinical. And these two tribal populations apparently had a low sodium diet and had very low levels of blood pressure in their diet. Well, if you're not engaging the Randall cycle, that can be the case. But also, none of them were centenarians. They died very early, up to about 50 years of age. So I don't want to die at 50. Well, I'm 55 now, but you know what I mean? So the average age, it was piss poor. These people didn't have longevity. So sodium is very critical. As I said before, when they did the experiments back in the those clinical experiments in the 90s, and even earlier, they've done some experiments. When they withdrew 3 things, people lost muscle mass and bone mass, and they were protein. So when they removed amino acids, lowered the amino acid threshold, they lost bone and pretty much not only bone, but also muscle. When they removed phosphorus, again, we've been demonized that phosphorus takes out calcium out of the bones and causes problems. No, it doesn't. Phosphorus is very important for bone health and muscle health. Our body's full of phosphorus. Pretty much that was another important point. And the third one was sodium. Who would have believed? You lower sodium, your bone and muscle density goes down. That was a clinical study where they intravenously were putting in these things and controlling exactly what was going in. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll go with that clinical study, and where it actually shows dose dependency, fulfills the Bradford Hill criteria. And our tribal people, what do? They kill an animal, they drink the blood, sodium, ocean water from the animal, and they share it amongst themselves. They keep the rest for the rest of the group, and they consume it. And also the Maasai even put in their milk and mix it. Not accidental. If you're living in an arid environment, you need electrolytes. That's how they get them. They eat organ meats as well. It's a multivitamin. Small bits they cut off and they share amongst themselves. They got it figured out. We're still trying to sort it out. And we're getting confused. That's the ancestral stuff. The other stuff is the biohacks. And the biohacks have to come into play for 2 reasons. 1, because we want to extend life. 2, because we've done quite a bit of damage, which we need to rectify. That's why those other elements come in. And that's where you try to work out the details of how to slightly adjust and wiggle this and that to try and fix things. You got oxalates. Let's get the citric acid in. You've got this. Let's get this in, or whatever. That's how we have to operate differently from our ancestors, because they didn't stuff up their lifestyle. They, from birth to death, were on a species appropriate diet. And we're not like at the Sand people of the Kalahari before they were forced off into reservations and forced off the land by creating these, because the environmentalists wanted to create these national parks, and now these national parks have been eroded because there's too many bloody big animals like elephants and all that have not been put under control. They're tearing down a lot of the forests and degrading the environment. But anyway, there's those arguments, but we won't go into those ecological arguments. Well, we can't have the animal-human predator out there trying to balance those mischievous plant eaters, keeping them under control from, overgrowth and causing degradation. No, let's just. And these people were basically, this was a study done by Cordain, and it's in one of my videos with Bart, one of my chats, and I actually discuss how we didn't show the actual study because it was out of a book and, as copyright, so there was an issue, so we had to basically just talk about it and what was in it. And I was a bit critical on Cordain's because there was a couple of things in there that just contradicted, on the fats. So that's where we had a few issues because the cholesterol was very high and a couple of other things that they were actually finding. But then they were making claims that they weren't eating as much fat, that it was more protein heavy. Yes, it was very protein heavy, about on average 3.92 grams per kilo of body weight. So that's quite a lot. So let's say this is what the sand people of Kalahari consume in terms of protein. So 3.92 times 70. That is for somebody who's 70 kilos or 154 pounds, 274.4 grams of protein. Now, eat a steak is about a quarter. So divided that by 25. Talking about, these people were consuming quite a bit, like a kilo or more, which is basically times 2.2, so 2.5 pounds of pretty much animal foods every day. So they were getting shitloads of animal foods compared to most other people do today. It's more like, your Sean Bakers, and Sean Baker's a big boy compared to the sand people who are much shorter. That's, they're much not as big size-wise. They're quite lean and all that, and they're actually having just as much protein in a smaller size frame than he is. So, when I hear people talk this nonsense about protein, it's just ridiculous. Just have to look at basically, I did that looked at those rats, 70% protein in their diet. Big fuck rats. Yes, everything was big, plus their kidneys could filtrate much better, and they were very healthy. And we know that when you have small kidneys and atrophy of the kidneys, that is the first sign, the sign of kidney failure. So no, protein actually makes bigger kidneys, stronger kidneys, and more vibrant kidneys. And the extra taurine that's coming in from the diet actually breaks down all the fibrotic tissue and really keeps them clean. And as long as you're not glycating them with damn sugar, you're fine. So no, it's a marvel when you do the right thing and you eat the right things. I'm just going to flow right through here. Just yeah, I have, and a lot of people do. That was on one of my COVID ones. That's right, I did mention that. That was a while ago. Yes, I still do that. I still basically gargle salt water, really good. People used to do it in the past all the time. Very important. I am looking at some new, now that you brought that up, I am looking at some new strains of bacteria for the oral health and improving the oral health. See, the other ones are good in terms of suppressing the pathogens, but we need to restore some of the good guys back again that have been decimated by a lot of things that we've done. And so I found a brand it's a two-pronged product. And I'm going to do a video on it, and that's something that people will be able to incorporate, especially if they've got some oral hygiene issues or their families or whatever. A lot of these bacteria, unfortunately, these beneficial bacteria in the mouth that maintain good oral microbiome, are usually decimated by glyphosate and decimated by antibiotics. And a lot of us have sustained some decimation of these things. So these things really help with the sort of plaques that are involved in cavities, and the sort of all these other issues are related to the oral gut microbiome and all that. And they should also reduce some of the pathogens that potentially are also involved with SIBO. So yeah, it's only one company that I've been able to find. I've looked at the research, and it's ridiculous. One company in the whole world that actually produces this product. I haven't actually looked into the licensing, what sort of licensing and license restrictions. So I'm hoping that there are no country restrictions where they restrict in certain countries. There are always options. There's in countries, let's say you're in a country where you can't get a direct delivery. There's always an option of actually using, like in America, there's like a forward on, like companies that will forward on stuff. I'm a bit lucky because my brother has actually got an account because of the business that he does for his own, because with his company that they do all these coffee machine repairs and stuff like that. And they get components from overseas, and they can get these companies forwarding some stuff to them. So I can actually access that if I need to be able to get stuff from other places. But, other people need to, look into something like that potentially. We'll see. I still haven't investigated it fully. I haven't done the video, but yeah, that is something that I want to do to help people with those additional things, because I think the Deuterium stuff, those strains are really good to suppress the pathogens. But at the end of the day, we still need to restore the good guys to be able to, get good oral, to have that good oral function, the microbiome to be really healthy. It's very important for the heart, very important for the body in general, that your mouth microbiome is in a healthy state. I think it's a very important thing. I think it's a neglected area, and there's limited research. I have been struggling to find sufficient research, I'll be honest. It's just bits and pieces here and there about certain strains of bacteria that they found and what they do and stuff like that, and how they balance and improve the pH and stuff like that, all these sort of things, and suppress the other nasties and all these improvements and bring down inflammation and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's now just a question of me doing the video and trying to piece together some of the best way of actually getting the stuff for people. So, because there's a lot of people that still have some underlying oral health issues that haven't been completely resolved, and that can be another factor as well. There sometimes can be older people in your family. I mean, as I've talked about leucine, family members, older people that you literally won't eat more meat. Just let's accept that. And you can probably give them a leucine and taurine supplement to help them to, one, transport more aminos in, two, cause more muscle protein synthesis. And we know that from the people that were fasted, that they actually got better results. So if we can get our old people, frail people, to basically improve their muscle protein synthesis with a leucine supplement, you put it in their yogurt, they mix it up, they consume it, and with taurine, and do it in the evening, and they get some good muscle protein synthesis from the stuff that they got through day. Most of the growth factors and the growth hormone and all that usually happen at night, so they'll get more GABA, more calming effect from the taurine as well. So all that helps. Yeah, all these sort of elements, but also some of these people have a lot of, especially old people that have been eating a lot of kibble and crap like that, usually also have very poor mouth microbiome. But a lot of people have young kids now. Everybody, it's a lot over too much glyphosate, too much antibiotics in their life, all these problems. And this, sometimes you may go on a carnivore diet and you still may have a very poor oral microbiome that could still create issues to this day. So, and I don't want people to be basically dependent on those oral bacteria that I've, the Swedish ones. It's not practical to be taking them for life. It's just not to basically suppress the nasties. We need to restore back some of the good stuff, good guys. And that's what these supplements do, that I'll be talking about in the coming weeks, to be able to help people try and find a way back into good health. Yeah, pretty much. Let me just find my little... yep, there it is. Jared, good to see you here, mate. I had to bring up my little thing because it's actually gone behind all the other stuff, so I couldn't actually see it. You're late, mate. Do you realise that? Definitely not. We won't go into that. Bitch. Oh, God, Alex. That's typical of you. Oh, God, I just realised I'll probably get demonetised because I said that word. See what you do to me? Can you tell me how much ferritin is ideal and how does one maintain a good value? I'm going to do a video on all that, and I'm going to talk about how different pathogens affect ferritin levels and all that sort of stuff. So wait and see, and I will go into it because I'm about to pull the plug. I'm just floating through and I'm about to pull the plug because I do have a day job tomorrow, so I do need to get to bed. I've been reminded by a number of people, in particular Hello Kitty, telling me that I need to sleep because I went very late to bed. Last night I actually went to bed about 2. I forgot about setting up the live stream, so eventually I set them up very late, as people would have noticed, very late notifications. And I had to wake up early as well. I put the alarm clock on, so I only got about nearly 6 hours of sleep. So, yeah, and I'm beat up now doing all these sort of things. In the old days, I wouldn't have had the energy to do all this sort of stuff. So I have to thank the carnivore diet or the current species appropriate way of living to give me that extra, zest. But I'm antigen testing this very minute after Irish funeral last Thursday. Results about 20 minutes for anyone interested. The testing. It's quick and quick. Do you get a free coffee? What was that? Can I eat bacon from a farm right out of the package? Maybe. I won't say yes. It depends on the farm, the source. Do you know whether it's a good source? I get smoked bacon. So it's salted, cured. Sorry, let me go back. It's raw, salted. So it's sort of cured with salts, not nitrate. It's nitrate free. It's just salts, and it basically smoked. So it's mildly cooked in a sense and all that. It's from the the smoking effect. So it's not really cooked. It's sort of like it just takes in the smoking. And I do eat. It's foraged, so it's free range foraged, and I do eat some of that raw on occasions. So I haven't had any problems. But can I recommend the same thing to other people when I don't know their damn sources or where they're getting it from? No idea, mate. Yeah. If it's basically, if you don't really know the source really well, you haven't researched it, probably not. Because you never know. So I wouldn't take the risk personally. But if you do, yeah. My cat loves lard. Ah, yes. That cat has got good tastes, Alex. Actually, Dad feeds my sister's cat that's still with him. Yes, it's still with him. hasn't got to Melbourne yet. Hasn't been shipped out. It's still with him. And it's still a bit wary of me. Bloody cat. And yeah, he feeds a pork, bacon, pork, things like ham. Dad buys those thick hams and all that. And when he's eating himself, he cuts a big slice and gives it to the cat as well. So that cat's well fed. God, you'd want, if you could come back as an animal, you'd want to come back as a cat for my father. You'd be real well fed, looked after. Oops. Do I see anything in particular? Oops. My sort of last quick. Do I see anything in particular? And then I'll pull the plug. Yeah, sort of. That's why you get those, like in Norway, you get those lakes that are very high much higher in deuterium, heavy water. Actually, the Germans went there for the heavy water in the Second World War for that purpose. And quickly, oops. Did I miss anything? Nope. My last minute going through quick. What was that? Angela asking, Harry, please don't finish before commenting on my friends with 220 millimole vitamin D. So their levels are fairly on the high side. How much are they supplementing? Usually you'd have to supplement quite very high. Not comment directly, but any idea about 92-year-old Irish winter with very high vitamin D levels? Not comment directly, but any idea about 92-year-old after Irish winter with very high vitamin D levels? No idea how the hell. Look, there are fish that have got quite a bit of, unless you're consuming massive amounts of cod liver oil, or I don't think you can actually get that high even with massive amounts of cod liver oil. You'd have to basically be taking supplements. I just, Angela, can't. Do you know the person? They must have been taking, because that's very high. You've got to be supplementing. I don't. The only other thing that I can think of is some sort of derangement in storage. So that's the only thing that I can think of is some sort of derangement in storage. Also, the levels may be high, the 25-OHD, if they've got kidney issues. That means they can't convert it to the active form, so they're continually storing it. That's the only other thing that I can think of. So it's either a derangement, they're supplementing heavily, which I find unlikely in today's world. I would probably say they have probably got a kidney problem, and they can't, for some reason, convert the 25-OHD to the active form. And as a consequence, they're starting to build up their storage. It's a bit like people are not being able to release ferritin, and so because what they do test is a 25-OHD, which is a stored form. So increasing the stored form means to me that they can't access this for whatever reason. Something's going wrong. It could be a kidney issue and inability to basically convert it to the active form. Now, at that age, some people do have extremely low taurine levels, and that can be a problem in the kidneys' function. I'm not saying that that's the reason, but it's a possibility, Angela. It's a possibility. Is it, somebody related to you or something like that? Send me an email. I do, and send me some information about this person. Have they done any tests on their kidneys? So what do they know about? So, yeah, I think that it could be something to do with their kidneys not functioning properly and not converting the stored form into the active form. So some of their tissue is going to be really, screaming out for vitamin D. Also, there's a potential for, other derangements. But is Angela still here? Is she gone? Maybe she's gone. If you're not here and you do listen to the rest of it, send me an email. Let me know exactly what's happening, whether this person's actually done any tests on their kidneys. And if they haven't, please get their kidneys tested. And then come back to me. Once you've got some information about their kidney status, come back to me and we'll see, and tell me about if they're taking any meds or anything like that, because taurine is going to be an important part of that. Depending on what the state of their kidneys is, we may throw in alpha lipoic acid in a way to basically help do massive electron doning to stabilize tissue in the kidneys. So, hi, Ari, thanks about the response and ideas. I'll email you the actual blood results just to verify it's a real thing. Great idea for me to follow up. Yep, not a problem. So we need to find out, because if you're building up stored form, 24-OHD to those sort of levels through winter, it's just telling me you can't convert it, and it's a kidney issue. Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking Irish, very pale skin might link with. Yeah, I really think that it's a problem of conversion. But yeah, you need to do some tests to verify exactly what's happening with the kidneys. And yeah, so that's a really critical one. I'm not sure about all the tests. I remember who actually told me. I can't remember now. I was having a conversation with somebody. We were talking about kidney 125 OHD, the active, and some kidney issues. It's a while ago. I'd have to sort of try and remind myself. But there are related issues to kidneys. So, and he's at the age bracket where you're going to get this extra senescence in certain tissue types, and some tissues may not function very well. And he may start be getting some subclinical, senescent, dysfunctioning kidney function in at the moment, which is causing some of these problems where he's storing and not utilizing in the active form. And that can create other problems like bone problems and tissue problems and all sorts of things, bone spurs, and, so it goes on and on. There can be a lot of other related things that can actually happen as a consequence of being that high for, especially if it's after a couple of years, if you're in that sort of state. Now, it's probably more recent, so we've still got time to, for him to basically get some resolution and some testing and find out exactly and try to sort it out. But we need to find out what the state of his kidneys are in, which is critical. Anyway, I think I've pretty much covered most of that. Anyway, that was that part, and that was that part. Guys, it's 10 o'clock. I need to pull the plug and head to bed soon. And I need to do something for about the next 30 odd minutes to finish something. This is work related, and then email it to myself to work and then go to sleep. So it's probably going to be 11 o'clock before I get to bed. So I need to get out of here. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your interesting questions. And thanks for all the sort of stuff that you guys have brought up. It's helped me to sort of think about other things, and to get into some of these other related subject matters. But, oops. You're welcome, mate. Trouble, it's always a pleasure. You're welcome, mate. Good to see you here, Alex. So please hit the like button on your way out. Slam it, hit it, do whatever you like. And if you're a Vagoon, please just even dislike me. It all counts, apparently, with the algorithms. Thanks, mate. Good to see you here, Mr. Babes. Yes. And good night to you as well. And good night to Hello Kitty as well, my dear, yes, good neighbour. Good night to you as well. And thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate it. And we will get stuck into it next week as well. Yep. So it'll be the 18th and the 16th. Remember I said the 16th? The 16th is going to be my date for the Zoom session, because then I go into that week of holidays, so I don't have to really worry about, if I'm staying up late or work or whatever, because, I've got nothing, I'll be away for a whole week. So basically it'll be just easy. So I think I said the 16th or the 23rd. I didn't actually make up my mind. I probably will do it at the beginning so I can actually have a bit less full on end of the week, so to speak, so then I can just cruise back to work. So yeah, we'll do it that way. So 16th for the Zoom session. So I'll set all that up, and then we can all get together. Oh, 0 dislikes. God, you mean they all like me? Oh, how nice. Thanks, Scotty. Take care, mate. I'm a little behind the audio, but sincere thanks for all the info today, Harry, and good day, people. Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it for being here. Raymond, thanks, mate. Alex, as always, no plan for a sleep. Yes, don't encourage her, Alex. Don't encourage her. How do we join the Zoom? I'll explain it all. So I'll basically do a little intro video, probably on Friday or Thursday. So there'll be an intro video. The video because I'm gonna do something else as well on Monday. So I'm gonna do the intro video on Monday together with another thing that I want to do. You'll have to wait and see what it is, and basically then I'll set up for the Zoom thing. I'll set up the Zoom session and make sure that it all works properly. May actually send a link to Hello Kitty to see if she can come in and make sure that it's all working, it's not any issues and all that. And then it'll be all set up. It'll be basically first come, first serve. I don't think we're going to look most of the time when I'm actually doing anything. We usually get about I will be basically that will actually provide a link to where you can download the Zoom, how you can actually set up your account, all that. So there'll be a little video explaining all that sort of stuff. And then you guys will be able to just set up your account, and all you'll be able to do is link to the link, and you'll be able to come into the Zoom session. So it'll be like, I mean, a number of you people have probably done like Skyping. It's similar to Skyping with multiple people. So that's the sort of setup it is. So we'll give it a try, see how it goes. And yeah, zoom. So if it ends up pretty good and people like it and all that, we may make it a more like a regular thing, so we'll see how this all pans out. It's just another new experiment. You're welcome, David. Oh, my dear llama. Ah, yes. Where's my Argentine lysine comments? Shadow banned, or are you just considering a video? Wink, wink. Sometimes I am, my dear llama. You should know that. I need to leave some for the videos. It's only there, like people with critical issues, that I have to give them a comment in that regard. But when it's on specific amino acids or specific things or stuff like that, sometimes you have to hold off, because you do want to make videos about some of this sort of stuff and nuance them and give your own different spin on some of this sort of stuff. So yes. I know you can't wait. But what do they say? Patience is a virtue, my dear llama. Anyway, I am out of here. Thank you. And I will see you lovely people next week. See yous.